What happens when a man who has everything to lose makes a deal with the one woman who could destroy it all? Ethan Hale had 48 hours to save his billion-dollar empire. Maya Collins had 60 seconds to decide if she'd gamble her entire future on a stranger's desperate lie. One shattered orchid, one impossible proposal, 2 weeks to fake forever. But some lies become too real to walk away from, and some contracts are written in something stronger than ink. This is their story, where love was never part of the deal, until it became the only thing that mattered. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The marble floor of the Hale Industries lobby was exactly the kind of cold that reminded people they didn't belong there. 18,000 square feet of Italian stone, each slab cut from the same quarry, each vein precisely matched, the kind of detail that whispered rather than shouted wealth. The building itself rose 73 stories above Manhattan's financial district, a steel and glass monument to what one man could build from nothing but ambition and refusal to fail. Ethan Hale stood in that lobby at 6:47 a.m., staring at his phone screen with the intensity of a man watching his entire world count down to zero. 48 hours. That's all the time he had before Gregory Whitmore, the only investor capable of saving his company, arrived from London to make his final decision. The preliminary meetings had gone well, too well actually, which should have been Ethan's first warning. Whitmore didn't invest in companies. He invested in families. Legacy, the kind of stability that came from a man who had his personal life as carefully constructed as his profit margins. 3 days ago, Whitmore's assistant had called with a new condition. The investor wanted to meet Ethan's fiancée, the woman Ethan had mentioned during their Tokyo meeting last month, the woman who understood the demands of his work, who grounded him, who made the brutal hours worth it, the woman who didn't exist. Ethan had fabricated her in a moment of exhaustion after Whitmore had spent 20 minutes talking about the importance of partnership, of having someone to build an empire with rather than for. The lie had slipped out so smoothly, so naturally. He'd even given her a name, Elena. Said she was in San Francisco closing a gallery deal, couldn't join them for dinner. He'd figured he had months to worry about it, maybe a year. Whitmore invested slow and careful. There would be time. He'd been wrong. Now Ethan stood in his own lobby, vice president of operations texting him every 15 minutes with new crisis updates. And he was searching his phone for something impossible, a woman willing to fake an engagement to a stranger. The idea was insane. Desperate, exactly the kind of decision Ethan Hale never made. But desperate was precisely what he'd become. The company was bleeding, not visibly. The quarterly reports still looked strong on paper, and the press still called him a visionary. But Ethan could see the hemorrhaging in the numbers that didn't make the earnings calls. The R&D division had burned through their capital developing technology that worked brilliantly in testing and failed catastrophically in production. The pivot had been expensive. The delays, even more so. Now they were 6 months from launching a product that would either revolutionize sustainable building materials or bankrupt them trying. Whitmore's investment wasn't just their best option. It was their only option. And Ethan was prepared to do whatever it took to secure it. Not for himself. He could survive failure. He'd been broke before, had slept in his car during the first year of building this company. But he had a daughter now, Claire. 7 years old, brilliant and fragile in the way children who'd lost a parent too young always were. She deserved stability, security, a future that didn't involve her father's business failures forcing them to uproot her life. The elevator chimed. Ethan barely registered it, too focused on the email he was drafting to his attorney about the legal implications of a contract engagement arrangement. Could it be done? What were the liability? The collision came out of nowhere. One moment he was standing near the security desk, phone in hand. The next, someone, crashed into him from the side with enough force to knock his phone clattering across the marble. The impact drove the air from his lungs. His hand shot out instinctively, catching the person's arm to steady them, even as his own balance wavered. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't see. The dolly caught on the..." The voice was breathless, feminine, genuinely distressed. Ethan looked down and found himself staring at a woman who'd somehow managed to bring chaos into the most controlled environment in Manhattan. She was on her knees, hands hovering over the wreckage of what appeared to have been a plant. Not just any plant. The shattered pot alone looked like it cost more than most people's monthly rent, and the orchid that had clearly been inside it lay broken across the pristine marble, its delicate purple petals crushed, its stem snapped. Around them, the disaster spread in a radius of broken pottery and scattered soil. A professional dolly lay on its side, two more plants still strapped to it, somehow miraculously intact. The woman's hands trembled as she tried to gather the broken pieces, and Ethan realized with something close to shock that she was crying. Not the polite tears of someone afraid of consequences. This was grief. 6 months, she whispered, and she wasn't talking to him anymore. She was talking to the plant. 6 months we worked together. You were perfect. You were going to be perfect. Ethan stood frozen. He'd prepared for 1,000 scenarios this morning. This wasn't one of them. His head of security appeared from nowhere, radio already in hand. "Mr. Hale, are you all right? Should I call?" "It's fine, Marcus." The words came automatically, though Ethan wasn't entirely sure they were true. His shoulder ached from the impact, and there was soil on his Tom Ford suit. But the woman was still on her knees, still trying to piece together something that was clearly beyond repair, and something about the scene kept him rooted in place. "The lobby." Marcus gestured at the destruction. "I said it's fine." Ethan's tone carried the weight of a man who wasn't accustomed to repeating himself. Marcus stepped back, though he didn't leave. Behind him, early morning employees were starting to trickle in, their curious glances making Ethan acutely aware of exactly how this looked. The CEO standing over a crying woman, surrounded by broken pottery. He should walk away. He had a crisis to manage and less than 48 hours to find a solution. This was a facilities problem, something Marcus and his team could handle in minutes. There was absolutely no reason for Ethan to be standing here, watching a stranger mourn a plant. Except he couldn't move. "Ma'am," he said, and his voice came out softer than he'd intended. "You're going to cut yourself on the pottery." She looked up then, and Ethan saw her clearly for the first time. Mid-20s, maybe early 30s. Dark hair pulled back in a braid that had half fallen apart in the collision. No makeup, or at least none that was winning against the tears. She wore cargo pants and a shirt with a university logo he didn't recognize, both dusted with soil. There was a small cut on her palm from the pottery, bleeding slightly. And her eyes. Even filled with tears, they were striking, not because of their color, but because of what he saw in them. Not fear, not concern about consequences or calculations about liability. Just loss. "I'm so sorry," she said again, and she was talking to him now. "I was bringing them up for the executive floor installation, and the dolly wheel caught, and I tried to grab it, but—" She stopped, looking down at the broken orchid. This was a Paphiopedilum rothschildianum. "Do you know how rare these are?" "I don't." Ethan found himself answering honestly. "There are maybe a few hundred left in the wild." This wasn't wild, obviously, but still. 6 months I've been cultivating it. It was going to bloom next week. Purple and gold, these intricate patterns that look like stained glass. Now it's— Her voice broke. She wasn't asking for money, wasn't making excuses, wasn't doing any of the things Ethan had learned to expect from people. She was just grieving. For a plant. Something shifted in Ethan's chest, a loosening of something he'd kept tight for years. "Can it be saved?" he heard himself ask. She shook her head, careful hands still cradling the broken stem. "Not like this. Maybe if I'd caught it right away, if the break was clean, but the root system is damaged and the crown—" She stopped, seemed to realize she was talking to someone who almost certainly didn't care about plant anatomy. "No, it can't be saved." Marcus cleared his throat. "Mr. Hale, your 7 a.m. is waiting in conference room 3. Ethan had forgotten about the 7 a.m., had forgotten about all of it, actually, which was so unlike him that it almost made him laugh. He was standing in his lobby, already running late, watching a woman cry over a plant while his company ticked closer to potential collapse. This was insane. But then she started to stand, and Ethan saw her wince as weight hit her left ankle. Saw her catch herself, hand going to the security desk for balance. Saw Marcus reach to help her and the woman wave him off with the kind of stubborn independence that Ethan recognized because he saw it in himself. "I'll pay for the damage," she said, looking at Ethan directly now. Her voice was steadier, professional. The tears had stopped, but the grief hadn't left her eyes. "The lobby floor, your suit, the time this is taking from your morning. I have insurance for the delivery service, but that won't cover everything. I know this building. I know you don't allow incidents like this. I'll make it right." She had no idea who he was. Ethan realized it with a start. She was apologizing to him like he was just another employee running late for work, not the man who owned the building she was standing in. "What's your name?" The question emerged before he'd decided to ask it. "Maya Collins." She shifted the broken orchid carefully, extending her non-bleeding hand. Her grip was firm despite everything. "I work for Verdant Solutions. We do the plant installations and maintenance for corporate buildings. This was supposed to be a special delivery for your executive floor renovation." She paused. "That you're apparently now funding entirely on your own." Ethan almost smiled. Almost. "The building will survive. That's generous of you." Maya looked around at the mess, then back at the dolly with its 2 remaining plants. "I should clean this up. Get out of your way." "You're hurt." Ethan gestured to her ankle. "It's fine. You can barely put weight on it." "I said it's fine." There was steel in her voice now, the kind that told Ethan she was used to handling her own problems, used to not asking for help, exactly like him. Marcus's radio crackled. Someone from the meeting was asking how much longer. Ethan should go, should let his head of security handle this, should move on with his day and his crisis and his desperate search for a solution to the Whitmore problem. Instead, he made a decision that would change everything. "How much?" Ethan asked. Maya blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The orchid, the rare one. How much would it cost to replace it?" "You can't replace it. That's the point. It took 6 months of—" "If you had to put a number on it." Ethan kept his voice level. "The time, the care, the rarity. What's it worth?" Maya stared at him like he'd asked her to calculate the value of a sunset. "That's not how it works. You can't just— These aren't commodities. They're living things that require patience and attention and—" She stopped, shook her head. Shook. "Why are you asking me this?" Ethan didn't answer. His mind was moving too fast, pieces clicking together in the way they did when he saw an opportunity that others missed. It was the same instinct that had built his company, the same pattern recognition that had made him a fortune in sustainable technology when everyone else was still focused on traditional materials. This woman, Maya Collins. She was exactly what he needed, and she had no idea. "I have a proposition for you," Ethan said. A proposition. Maya's tone was cautious now. She'd clearly dealt with men making propositions before, and her body language shifted slightly, protective. "Not that kind." Ethan kept his voice professional, businesslike. "I need someone to help me with a problem. You seem like someone who might benefit from solving problems for other people, particularly if those people had access to resources that could help with your work." Maya's eyes narrowed. "I don't understand." "Mr. Hale," Marcus tried again. "The meeting—" "Cancel it," Ethan said, not taking his eyes off Maya. "Actually, cancel everything until 9 a.m. I need conference room 12, private, no interruptions." Marcus hesitated only a fraction of a second before nodding. He knew better than to question Ethan when he used that tone. Within moments, he was speaking quietly into his radio, making it happen. Maya was watching Ethan like he'd lost his mind. She probably wasn't wrong. "I don't need a meeting," she said. "I need to clean this up and get back to my actual job before I get fired for taking too long on a delivery." "How much do they pay you?" Ethan asked. "Your actual job." "That's none of your—" "Humor me." Maya's jaw tightened. "Enough. But not enough to fund your own research. Not enough to access the kind of facilities and equipment that could take your work to the next level." Ethan was guessing, but the way her expression flickered told him he'd hit close to the mark. "You're working for someone else, spending your days doing installation work when you'd rather be doing research. Am I wrong? You don't know anything about me. I know you spent 6 months on that orchid. I know you're grieving over a plant the way most people grieve over relationships. I know you care more about the work than the money." Ethan glanced at the bleeding cut on her hand. "And I know you're the kind of person who takes responsibility for accidents instead of making excuses. In my experience, that's rare enough to be valuable." Maya stood there, orchid still cradled carefully in her hands, and Ethan could see her mind working. She was curious despite herself, despite the insanity of the situation. "What kind of problem?" she asked finally. Ethan gestured toward the elevator. "Conference room 12. Give me 15 minutes. If you don't like what I'm proposing, you walk away. I'll personally ensure your company knows this incident wasn't your fault, and I'll cover any costs associated with the damage. But if you are interested—" He paused, weighing exactly how much to reveal. "I can give you access to the kind of resources botanists spend their entire careers dreaming about. In exchange for what? 15 minutes of your time." Ethan extended his hand. "Do we have a deal?" Maya looked at his hand, looked at the broken orchid, looked at Marcus and the gathering employees and the mess on the lobby floor. Ethan could see the calculation happening, the careful weighing of risk versus reward that he recognized in himself. "Okay," she said finally, taking his hand. Her grip was steady. 15 minutes. The conference room was smaller than the ones Ethan usually used for negotiations, which was precisely why he'd chosen it. No massive table creating distance, no wall of windows making visitors feel exposed. Just enough space for a conversation that needed to feel personal rather than corporate. Maya sat in one of the leather chairs, still holding the broken orchid like she couldn't quite bring herself to put it down. Ethan had ordered coffee, which she'd declined. He'd ordered first aid supplies, which she'd also declined until he'd simply placed the kit on the table between them and waited. Finally, with obvious reluctance, she'd cleaned and bandaged the cut on her palm. Now she sat across from him, guarded and curious in equal measure, while Ethan tried to figure out exactly how to explain what he needed without sounding completely insane. "I'm going to be very direct," he said finally, "because I think you're the kind of person who prefers that." "All right. I need a fiancé, temporarily, for approximately 2 weeks. Ethan delivered the words in the same tone he'd used to discuss quarterly projections. Matter of fact. Professional. Maya stared at him. "I'm sorry, what?" "I have an investor arriving tomorrow. His name is Gregory Whitmore. He's prepared to invest $200 million in my company, funding that we critically need. But Whitmore doesn't just invest in businesses. He invests in people he believes will build lasting legacies. He wants stability, partnership, the kind of foundation that comes from a solid personal life. So get a fiancé." I told him I already had one. Ethan met her eyes. 3 weeks ago, in Tokyo. He was talking about family, about the importance of having someone to share the burden with. I was exhausted, dealing with time zone changes and crisis management, and the lie just came out. I gave her a name. Said she was in San Francisco. Figured I had months before it would matter. And now? Now Whitmore wants to meet her, tomorrow, at a private dinner. Ethan leaned forward slightly. I need someone who can be convincing, professional, someone who can handle high-pressure situations without falling apart, someone I can trust to maintain the arrangement for 2 weeks, after which the engagement will quietly end. Maya set the orchid down carefully on the table, giving herself time to process. You're asking me to lie to a potential investor. I'm asking you to play a role. Temporarily. Same thing. Is it? Ethan challenged. Actors play roles, consultants take on temporary assignments. I'm offering you a 2-week contract with very specific parameters. You attend a series of events with me, present as my fiancé, and help me secure funding that will save my company and protect 300 jobs. He paused. And in exchange, I'll give you something you can't get anywhere else. Money. Maya's tone was flat. Access. Ethan pulled out his phone, brought up a series of photos. There's a research institute in Connecticut, the Ashford Center. It's private, highly selective, and funded by some of the wealthiest families in the country. They have facilities that most universities can only dream about. Climate-controlled greenhouses spanning 10 acres, genetic sequencing labs, access to rare specimen collections from around the world. They could take your orchid work and amplify it 100 times over. He watched Maya's expression change as she looked at the photos, watched the hunger appear in her eyes, the longing that came from seeing something you'd wanted for years but never thought you'd actually reach. I can't get into Ashford, she said quietly. I've tried. Twice. They only accept researchers with doctoral degrees from top-tier programs, and I have a master's from a state school. On paper, I'm not qualified. But I am on their board of trustees. Ethan let that sink in. I can get you in, not just as a visitor, as a researcher with full access to their facilities. 6 months, renewable based on your work. You'd have funding, equipment, mentorship from some of the best botanists in the world. Maya's hands had started to shake. She pressed them flat against the table, fighting for control. Why me? You could hire an actress, someone professional. Because actresses play roles. You're a scientist who values truth. Ethan kept his voice level. This isn't about deception. It's about survival. My company is 6 months from launching technology that could revolutionize sustainable building materials. We're talking about reducing carbon emissions in the construction industry by 40%. But we need Whitmore's funding to get there. Without it, we collapse. The technology dies. 300 people lose their jobs. And my daughter... He stopped, surprised by the crack in his voice. Your daughter, Maya repeated softly. Claire, she's 7. Ethan pulled up a photo on his phone, showed it to Maya. His daughter grinning at the camera, gap-toothed and brilliant. Her mother died when she was 2, cancer. It's been just us for 5 years now. I've built this company to give her stability, security, a future. If it fails... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Maya looked at the photo for a long moment. Then she looked back at the orchid, broken and irreparable on the conference table. Finally, she looked at Ethan. 2 weeks, she said. It wasn't quite a question, but it wasn't quite agreement either. 14 days, several dinners, possibly a weekend event. You'd need to move into my apartment for the duration. Whitmore will expect us to be living together. Separate rooms, obviously, but it needs to appear authentic. And after 2 weeks, the engagement ends, quietly. You return to your life with full access to Ashford and a letter of recommendation that will open doors you've never even thought to knock on. Ethan pulled a contract from his briefcase, slid it across the table. I had my attorney draft this last night. All the terms we've discussed, plus compensation for your time. $50,000. Maya picked up the contract with trembling fingers, started reading. Ethan watched her process each clause, saw the exact moment she reached the section about Ashford access, and had to pause, pressing her lips together. This is insane, she whispered. Yes. I don't know you. You don't know me. True, Ethan acknowledged. But I know enough. You spent 6 months on that orchid. You grieve for broken things. You take responsibility instead of making excuses. In my experience, character shows up in small moments more than grand gestures. And everything I've seen from you in the past 20 minutes tells me you're exactly the kind of person I can trust with this. You're basing this on 20 minutes? I've made billion-dollar decisions on less. Ethan leaned back in his chair. I'm good at reading people, Maya. It's what I do. And what I see when I look at you is someone who understands the value of partnership. Who knows that sometimes you have to make difficult choices to protect what matters most. Maya was quiet for a long time, reading through the contract page by page. Ethan didn't rush her. He'd learned years ago that the best negotiations happened in silence, when people had space to think without pressure. Finally, she looked up. I need to think about it. You have until 8 p.m. tonight. Ethan pulled out a business card, wrote a number on the back. This is my personal cell. Call me with your answer. If it's no, we never speak of this again. If it's yes, he gestured to the contract. We have a lot of work to do before tomorrow's dinner. Maya took the card, held it like it might bite her. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you really doing this? She met his eyes directly. The company, the jobs, your daughter, I understand all that, but there's something else. What are you afraid of? Ethan felt the question hit deeper than he'd expected. Most people didn't ask. Didn't look past the successful CEO facade to see the man underneath. But Maya was asking, and somehow in this moment he wanted to answer honestly. I'm afraid of failing her, he said quietly. Claire, she's already lost her mother. If she loses everything else because I couldn't keep the company stable. He paused, forced himself to continue. I promised my wife, before she died, that I'd take care of our daughter, that I'd give her the best life possible. This company is how I keep that promise, and I'm running out of time to make it work. Maya nodded slowly, like something had just clicked into place. Okay. Okay, you'll think about it? Okay, I'll do it. She stood, contract in hand, on one condition. Name it. We don't lie to your daughter. Maya's voice was firm. Whatever story we tell Whitmore, whatever role we play for the investor, Claire doesn't get lied to. Children who've lost parents deserve honesty more than anyone. Ethan felt something shift in his chest again, that same loosening from before. Agreed. Then we have a deal. Maya extended her hand. This time, when Ethan shook it, he felt the weight of what they were doing settle over both of them. A contract. A partnership. A carefully constructed fiction that would either save everything or destroy them both. I'll have my driver take you home, and Ethan said. You need to get that ankle looked at, and you should rest before tonight. We'll meet at 8 p.m., my apartment. We need to go over our story, establish the details Whitmore will expect. Bring whatever you'll need for 2 weeks. I work until 6. Call in sick. I can't just... Maya. Ethan kept his voice gentle. You're about to spend 2 weeks pretending to be engaged to a billionaire. Calling in sick to your current job is probably the least complicated part of this arrangement. She laughed then, surprising both of them. It was a slightly hysterical sound, the kind that came from stress and exhaustion and the surreal nature of everything that had happened in the past hour. This is completely insane, she said again. Completely, Ethan agreed. Does that change your answer? Maya looked at the broken orchid one more time. Then she looked at the contract. Then she looked at Ethan with those striking eyes that saw more than he was comfortable with. No, she said, it doesn't change my answer. Good. Ethan stood, offered his hand again. Then welcome to the most complicated 2 weeks of your life, Ms. Collins. It's Maya, she corrected. If I'm going to be your fake fiancé, you should probably use my first name. Fair point. Ethan smiled, genuine this time. Welcome aboard, Maya. She left the conference room still holding the contract and the broken orchid, limping slightly but refusing help from Marcus when he appeared to escort her downstairs. Ethan watched her go, the stranger who'd collided into his life and somehow become the solution to an impossible problem. His phone buzzed. Another crisis update from his VP. Another reminder that time was running out and his company was bleeding and Whitmore would be here in less than 36 hours. But for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt something other than panic. Not quite hope. He was too pragmatic for that. But possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, this insane plan might actually work. He picked up his phone, started drafting messages to prepare his staff for Maya's arrival. There would be questions, speculation. His team knew he'd been single since his wife's death, focused entirely on Claire and the company. Suddenly introducing a fiancé would raise eyebrows. But Ethan had learned to control narratives. It's what CEOs did. He'd craft the story carefully, feed it to the right people. Let it spread through the company with just enough mystery to feel authentic. By the time Whitmore arrived tomorrow, everyone would believe that Ethan Hale had found someone worth building a future with. The lie would be perfect. Ethan just had to hope that perfection would be enough to save everything that mattered. And somewhere in the back of his mind, in a place he wasn't quite ready to acknowledge, a small voice whispered a question he couldn't answer. What happens when the lie starts to feel more real than the truth? He pushed the thought away, focused on the immediate crisis, and prepared to spend the next 2 weeks pretending that love could be as carefully controlled as a quarterly earnings report. What Ethan didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that some things refuse to be controlled. Some partnerships become more than contracts, and some collisions change everything, shattering not just orchids but the carefully constructed walls around a heart that had forgotten how to hope for anything beyond survival. The truth would come. Eventually. But first, Ethan Hale had to learn how to fake forever with a woman who'd already seen through him in the first 20 minutes. It was going to be a very long 2 weeks. Maya stood outside the glass tower on Fifth Avenue at exactly 7:58 p.m., a worn duffel bag slung over her shoulder and her heart hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape. The building looked different at night, all lit windows and reflected city lights, the kind of place that existed in a different tax bracket than anywhere she'd ever lived. She'd changed clothes 3 times before leaving her tiny studio in Brooklyn, finally settling on dark jeans and a navy sweater that didn't have any visible plant stains. Her hands were still shaking. The doorman recognized her immediately, which shouldn't have been possible since she'd only been here once before, 12 hours ago, and had left through the service entrance. But apparently word traveled fast in buildings where the lobby cost more than most houses. "Ms. Collins," he said warmly, like they were old friends. "Mr. Hale is expecting you, penthouse level. The elevator will take you directly up." The elevator ride lasted 47 seconds. Maya counted every one of them, trying to calm her breathing, trying to convince herself that she hadn't just made the worst decision of her life. 2 weeks. That's all this was. 14 days of pretending to be someone she wasn't, in exchange for 6 months at a research facility she'd dreamed about since graduate school. It was transactional, professional, completely manageable. The elevator doors opened directly into Ethan's apartment, and Maya's carefully constructed composure crumbled. She'd expected wealth. She'd braced herself for the kind of sterile luxury that came with executive penthouses. What she hadn't expected was this: floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, warm hardwood floors scattered with colorful rugs, built-in bookshelves overflowing with novels and children's books, and what looked like actual family photos. A kitchen that opened into a living space that somehow felt both expensive and lived in. And everywhere, there were signs of a child. Drawings on the refrigerator. A backpack hung by the door. Toys organized in neat baskets that suggested someone tried very hard to maintain order in the chaos of raising a kid alone. "You're early." Ethan appeared from a hallway, barefoot, wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt that made him look younger than he had in his suit this morning. Less like a CEO, more like just a man. "I thought you'd be fashionably late. Test my commitment to the arrangement." "I'm not fashionable enough for fashionably late," Maya said, then immediately regretted it. This was supposed to be professional. She was supposed to be confident, capable, not making self-deprecating jokes in his entryway. But Ethan smiled, genuine and unexpected. "Good. I hate waiting." He took her duffel bag before she could protest. "Your room is this way. We have about an hour before I need to put Claire to bed, which gives us time to go over the basics of our story. Unless you need to settle in first?" "No, I'm fine. Let's get started." He led her down a hallway lined with more family photos. Maya caught glimpses of a woman with kind eyes holding a baby, the same woman laughing at a beach, then just Ethan and Claire, year by year, growing up together. The timeline of loss was written in the absence, in the way the photos shifted from family portraits to father-daughter moments. "This is you," Ethan said, opening a door to a bedroom that was bigger than Maya's entire apartment. Soft gray walls, white linens, another massive window. "Bathrooms through there. I had my assistant stock it with basics, but if you need anything specific, just let me know. The closet—" He paused, seemed to reconsider. "We should probably talk about that." "The closet?" "Whitmore's dinner tomorrow is black tie. The events over the next 2 weeks are going to require a certain presentation." Ethan's tone was careful, diplomatic. "I don't want to overstep, but I'd like to arrange for a stylist to come by in the morning. Someone who can help with wardrobe for the various events." Maya felt heat creep up her neck. "You're saying my clothes aren't good enough." "I'm saying that this world has expectations, and meeting them will make everything easier for both of us." Ethan met her eyes directly. "I wore suits I couldn't afford when I was building this company, borrowed ties from friends, learned which fork to use by watching YouTube videos. It's not about who you are. It's about playing the game well enough to win." The honesty disarmed her. Maya set her bag down on the pristine white duvet. "Okay, stylist in the morning. What else?" "Dinner. Have you eaten?" She hadn't, had been too nervous to keep anything down since signing the contract this afternoon. But admitting that felt like admitting weakness, so Maya just shook her head. "Come on," Ethan said. "I'll make something while we talk." The kitchen was clearly Ethan's domain. He moved through it with the easy confidence of someone who'd cooked thousands of meals, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator, setting a pot of water to boil. Maya perched on a bar stool at the island, watching him dice vegetables with surprising precision. "So," he said, not looking up from the cutting board, "tell me about yourself. The real version, not the one we'll tell Whitmore. If we're going to make this convincing, I need to know who you actually are." Maya wrapped her hands around the water glass he'd set in front of her. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Start with the basics. Where are you from? Family? How did you end up working with plants?" It felt strange being asked these questions by a stranger she was supposed to pretend to love, but Ethan's voice was genuinely curious, and something about the domestic normalcy of watching him cook made it easier to answer honestly. "Small town in Oregon, population 3,000. My parents run a plant nursery. Nothing fancy, just the kind of place where people buy tomato starts and garden supplies. I grew up in greenhouses." Maya smiled at the memory. "I used to think everyone spent their childhood learning Latin names for flowers and helping their mom propagate succulents. Turns out that's not normal." "Sounds perfect to me," Ethan said. He added pasta to the boiling water, started heating oil in a pan. "What brought you to New York?" "Graduate school, Columbia. Full scholarship for my master's in botany, focusing on conservation genetics. I thought I'd go back to Oregon after, maybe teach at a university, do research on the side." She paused, watching him add garlic to the pan. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and homey. "But then my advisor introduced me to the work being done on rare species cultivation, and I got obsessed. These plants that are going extinct that exist in such tiny populations that one bad season could wipe them out forever. I wanted to save them." "The orchid," Ethan said quietly. "The orchid." Maya felt the familiar ache in her chest. Paphiopedilum rothschildianum, one of the rarest orchids in the world. I was working with a conservation group trying to establish a breeding population outside their native habitat. That one was my best success. 6 months of perfect growth, right conditions, ready to bloom. And I destroyed it in 60 seconds because I wasn't paying attention to where I was going. "I destroyed it," Ethan corrected. "You were making a delivery. I was the one standing in the middle of the lobby staring at my phone. If anyone's responsible, it's me." The generosity of that statement caught Maya off guard. She'd spent the entire day replaying the collision, cataloging her failures. It hadn't occurred to her that Ethan might be doing the same thing. He plated the pasta, something simple but elegant, garlic and olive oil and fresh herbs, and slid it across the counter to her. Then he poured 2 glasses of wine, though Maya noticed he barely touched his. "Your turn," Maya said between bites. The pasta was perfect, exactly what she'd needed without knowing she needed it. "Tell me about you, the real version." Ethan leaned against the counter, considering. "Born in Michigan. Single mother, worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. I put myself through state school on scholarships and loans, graduated with a degree in engineering and more debt than I could calculate. Worked for a construction firm for 6 years, saw how much waste there was in building materials, how much damage we were doing to the environment with every project. Started developing alternatives in my apartment at night. And built a billion-dollar company," Maya added. "Eventually, after years of sleeping in my car, eating ramen, pitching to investors who thought I was insane for trying to make sustainable materials profitable." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Met my wife during that time, Jennifer. She was a lawyer, believed in the work when no one else did. Helped me navigate the legal side of starting a company. We got married fast, had Claire faster. It was chaotic and beautiful, and..." He stopped, took a breath. "Then the cancer diagnosis, stage 4. We had 8 months. "I'm sorry," Maya said, and meant it. Claire was 2. Too young to remember her mother clearly, which breaks my heart every single day. Ethan's voice was steady, but Maya could hear the cost of that steadiness. "So I made a promise that I'd give our daughter the best life possible, that I'd build something that would provide for her, give her opportunities, make sure she never had to struggle the way I did. This company is how I keep that promise. And Whitmore's investment is the difference between keeping my promise and breaking it." Ethan met her eyes. "Which is why I need this to work, Maya. Not for me, for her." Before Maya could respond, there was a sound from the hallway, small feet on hardwood, and then a voice, clear and curious. "Daddy, who are you talking to?" Ethan's entire demeanor changed. The tension left his shoulders, his expression softened, and when he turned toward the hallway, Maya saw nothing but pure love in his face. Hey, Bug, I thought you were reading in your room. A little girl appeared, 7 years old, with her father's dark hair and her mother's kind eyes. She wore pajamas covered in dinosaurs and carried a well-loved stuffed elephant. When she saw Maya, she stopped, suddenly shy. We have a guest, Ethan said gently. This is Maya. Maya, this is my daughter, Claire. Maya slid off the bar stool, crouched down to Claire's level. Hi, Claire, I like your pajamas. Are those velociraptors? Claire nodded, clutching the elephant tighter. Velociraptors are my favorite. They're small but really smart, and they hunted in packs. She paused, considering. Are you having dinner with us? I am. Your dad made pasta. He makes good pasta. Claire looked at her father, then back at Maya. Are you the plant lady, the one who broke the special flower? Maya felt her face heat. Of course Ethan had told his daughter about the collision. Honesty. They'd agreed on honesty. Yes, that was me. I'm really sorry about that. Daddy says accidents happen sometimes. Claire took a step closer. He says you take care of plants like I take care of Bernard. She held up the elephant. Bernard is an excellent name, Maya said seriously. And yes, I do. I work with plants to help them grow. Can you make the broken one grow back? The question was so innocent, so full of hope, that Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. No, sweetheart, that one was hurt too badly. But I can grow new ones, different ones. It just takes time and patience. Claire thought about this, nodded. Okay. Then, with the sudden subject change of children everywhere, do you want to see my rock collection? Ethan laughed. Bug, Maya just got here. Maybe let her finish dinner first. It's okay, Maya found herself saying. I'd love to see your rock collection. 20 minutes later, Maya was sitting cross-legged on Claire's bedroom floor, examining an impressive array of stones and minerals, while the little girl explained each one with scientific precision that would have made any geologist proud. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, watching them both, and Maya felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. This one is quartz, Claire explained, holding up a clear stone. I found it at the park, and this one is mica. See how it's all layered? You can peel it apart, but you have to be really careful or it breaks. You're right, Maya said, genuinely impressed. Where did you learn all this? Books, and my science teacher, and Daddy takes me to the Museum of Natural History sometimes. Claire picked up another rock, this one dark and smooth. This one I don't know yet. Daddy and I are going to research it together. That sounds like a perfect project, Maya said. She glanced at Ethan. You're raising a scientist. She gets it from her mother, Ethan said softly. Jennifer loved learning new things. Claire has her curiosity. Claire looked up at her father, then back at Maya. And then, with the directness that only children possess. Are you my daddy's girlfriend? The question hung in the air. Maya felt panic rise in her throat. They hadn't discussed this, hadn't prepared for what to tell Claire. The contract said honesty, but how much honesty? How did you explain a fake engagement to a 7-year-old? Ethan moved into the room, sat down on the floor next to his daughter. Maya and I are friends, he said carefully. We're going to spend some time together over the next few weeks. She's going to be staying here for a little while. Like a sleepover? Claire's eyes lit up. Sort of like that, Ethan agreed. Is that okay with you? Claire looked at Maya, considering with a seriousness that seemed beyond her years. Will you teach me about plants? If you want me to, Maya said. I'd be happy to. Okay, Claire smiled. Then it's okay with me. She yawned suddenly, huge and unself-conscious. I'm sleepy now. Bedtime, Ethan confirmed. He stood, offered Maya a hand up. Say goodnight to Maya, Bug. Good night, Maya. Thank you for looking at my rocks. Thank you for showing me, Maya said. They're wonderful. She left the room, heard Ethan's voice behind her reading the beginning of a story, Claire's questions interrupting every few sentences. The domestic intimacy of it made Maya's chest ache. This wasn't what she'd signed up for. The contract was supposed to be simple. Attend events, play a role, collect her reward. It wasn't supposed to involve bedtime stories and rock collections, and a little girl who'd already lost too much. Maya found herself back in the kitchen, cleaning up the dinner dishes because she needed something to do with her hands. She was loading the dishwasher when Ethan returned 20 minutes later. She's out, he said. Fell asleep halfway through chapter 3. Happens every time. He paused, watching Maya work. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Maya rinsed the last plate, dried her hands. She's amazing, Ethan. Your daughter, the way she thinks, the way she sees the world, you're doing an incredible job. I'm doing my best. Ethan's voice was quiet, which some days feels like barely enough. He moved to the island, pulled out a folder Maya hadn't noticed before. We should probably get to work. Go over our story. For the next 2 hours, they built their fiction. How they met. At a sustainable technology conference 6 months ago. First date. Small Italian restaurant in the West Village. The proposal. Simple. Private. Just the two of them at the botanical garden. They crafted details, established timelines, created a relationship that had never existed outside the pages of Ethan's notes. Whitmore will test us, Ethan warned. He'll ask questions designed to trip us up, look for inconsistencies. We need to know each other's backgrounds, habits, preferences, the kind of things couples know without thinking. Okay, Maya said. What's your coffee order? Black. 2 sugars if I'm stressed. You? Latte. Extra foam, sometimes with vanilla if I'm feeling indulgent. They went back and forth like that, trading information like baseball cards. Favorite foods, pet peeves, childhood memories. With each answer, the fiction became more detailed, more real. And somewhere in the process, Maya realized she was actually enjoying this, the collaborative building of a story, the way Ethan listened to her answers and remembered every detail. What are you most afraid of? Ethan asked suddenly. Maya blinked. That's not really a couple question. Whitmore will ask deep questions. He believes you understand someone's character through their fears. Ethan's gaze was steady. So, what are you most afraid of? Irrelevance, Maya answered before she could stop herself. Spending my whole life working on things that don't matter. Having all this knowledge and passion and curiosity and never using it to make a real difference. She paused. Your turn. Failing Claire, Ethan said without hesitation. Making a choice that seems right in the moment but destroys her future. Being the reason she ends up struggling or suffering or... He stopped, shook his head. Everything I do comes back to that fear. Including this, Maya said quietly. Especially this. Ethan looked at her directly. I need you to understand something, Maya. This arrangement we've made, it's not a game to me. My daughter's entire future depends on me securing Whitmore's investment. If I fail, if this falls apart, the consequences are real and permanent. So I need to know, are you absolutely certain you can do this? Because if you have any doubts, any hesitation, now is the time to walk away. Maya thought about the question, about the research facility she'd dreamed of accessing, about the orchid she'd destroyed and all the ones she could save with the right resources, about the little girl sleeping down the hall who collected rocks and asked questions and deserved a father who wasn't drowning in stress. I'm certain, she said. I gave you my word. I don't break my word. Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Relief, maybe. Or trust. Thank you. They worked for another hour, until Maya's eyes started to blur, and she couldn't remember whether they'd decided on Thai or Indian for their second date. Finally, Ethan closed the folder. That's enough for tonight. Tomorrow's going to be intense. The stylist in the morning, final preparations in the afternoon, and the dinner starts at 7. You should get some rest. Maya stood, stretched muscles that had gone stiff from sitting. Ethan, what do we tell Claire? Long term, I mean, when this arrangement ends. The truth, Ethan said, that you were a friend who helped her father through a difficult time, that sometimes adults need to make complicated choices, that it's okay when things don't work out the way you planned. He paused. She's already lost her mother. I won't make her lose faith in honesty, too. The integrity of that answer made Maya's throat tight. You're a good father. I'm a desperate father, Ethan corrected. There's a difference. But watching him there, exhausted and honest and clearly terrified of making the wrong choice, Maya thought maybe there wasn't as much difference as he believed. Maybe good parenting was just another word for doing desperate things out of love. She said goodnight, retreated to her borrowed bedroom with its expensive linens and its view of the city. lay in the darkness thinking about contracts and orchids and little girls who collected rocks, thinking about the man down the hall who'd built an empire to keep a promise to his dying wife. Maya had agreed to 2 weeks of pretending. What she hadn't anticipated was how quickly the pretending might start to feel like something else entirely. How sitting in Ethan's kitchen felt natural. How Claire's questions made her want to stay and answer them. How the fear in Ethan's eyes when he talked about failing his daughter made Maya want to promise that she'd help make sure that never happened. This was supposed to be transactional, professional, a simple exchange of services for access to resources she needed. But lying there in the dark, Maya suspected that nothing about the next 2 weeks would be simple at all. And the most complicated part wouldn't be the lies they told Whitmore. It would be the truths they were already starting to tell each other. The next morning arrived too fast and too bright. Maya woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee drifting down the hallway. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back, the contract, the arrangement, the impossible thing she'd agreed to do. The clock read 6:47 a.m. Maya dragged herself out of bed, followed the coffee smell to the kitchen, and found Ethan already dressed in running clothes, making breakfast while Claire sat at the counter doing homework. "Morning," he said, glancing up. "Coffee's fresh. The stylist will be here at 9, so you have time to wake up first." "Daddy runs every morning," Claire informed Maya seriously. "Even when it's cold, I think it's weird." "It's called discipline," Ethan said, ruffling his daughter's hair. "Keeps your old man from losing his mind." "You're not old," Claire protested. "You're only 36. Maya accepted the coffee Ethan poured for her, added vanilla creamer from the refrigerator. He'd remembered, she realized, from their conversation last night, and settled onto a stool. This domestic morning scene felt surreal. 24 hours ago, she'd been living alone in Brooklyn, planning her day around plant deliveries. Now she was drinking coffee in a penthouse while a billionaire made pancakes and his daughter did math problems. "Maya knows about plants," Claire said suddenly, looking up from her homework. "Can she come to school for career day?" Ethan's hand froze mid-flip. "Bug, career day isn't for another 3 months. So, we have to sign up early if we want good speakers." Claire turned to Maya with hopeful eyes. "Would you come? My friend Emma's mom is a doctor, and Tyler's dad is a firefighter, but nobody ever brings a plant scientist." Maya felt Ethan's gaze on her, waiting to see how she'd handle this. The arrangement was for 2 weeks. Career day was 3 months away. By then, their fake engagement would be over. Maya would be at Ashford, and Claire would need an explanation for why her father's fiancée had disappeared. But looking at the little girl's eager face, Maya couldn't bring herself to say no. "How about this?" she said carefully. "If I'm still around when career day happens, I'll absolutely come talk about plants. And either way, I'll make sure someone amazing comes. Deal?" "Deal," Claire agreed, satisfied. She went back to her homework, and Ethan shot Maya a grateful look. The morning moved quickly after that. Ethan left for his run, Claire finished breakfast and was collected by her nanny, a warm woman named Rosa who gave Maya a curious but friendly smile. And then Maya was alone in the apartment, trying not to panic about the stylist arriving in 45 minutes. She showered in the guest bathroom, which was bigger than her bedroom at home, and stocked with products that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. When she emerged, wrapped in a fluffy robe she'd found hanging on the doorbell was ringing. Maya opened it to find a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes, carrying what appeared to be an entire boutique's worth of garment bags. "You must be Maya," the woman said, sweeping past her into the apartment. "I'm Victoria. Ethan called me last night, gave me your measurements, which I will verify because men are notoriously terrible at this, and a basic rundown of what we're working with. Black tie dinner tonight, various events over the next 2 weeks, and apparently we need to make you look like someone who'd catch a billionaire's eye." She paused, really looked at Maya. "Though honestly, dear, I don't think that's going to be the hard part." 3 hours later, Maya barely recognized herself. Victoria had worked with the efficiency of a general commanding troops, pulling out dresses and rejecting them, mixing and matching pieces, adjusting and pinning. The stylist had strong opinions about everything: colors that worked with Maya's skin tone, cuts that flattered her figure, accessories that added sophistication without trying too hard. The goal Victoria explained while Maya tried on her fifth dress, is to look like you belong in Ethan's world without looking like you're trying to belong. Natural confidence, like you wandered into wealth and decided it was fine, but you could take it or leave it. She adjusted the neckline of a deep green silk gown. This one, for tonight, it's perfect. Maya looked in the mirror and had to admit Victoria was right. The dress was stunning, elegant but not ostentatious, expensive but not showy. It made her look like someone who could stand next to a billionaire at a formal dinner and belong there. Now, Victoria said, let's talk about the rest of your life for the next 2 weeks. By the time Ethan returned from his office at 4 p.m., Maya's temporary wardrobe was organized in the guest room closet. She'd had a crash course in high society etiquette from Victoria, and her head was spinning with instructions about which fork to use when. Ethan found her sitting on her bed, staring at the row of dresses hanging in the closet like they might attack her. Survivor's guilt? He asked from the doorway. Fashion shock, Maya corrected. Do you know how much that woman just spent on clothes I'll wear for 2 weeks? I do. I signed the checks. Ethan came into the room, looked at the closet. Victoria's good. Did she terrorize you too badly? She was actually kind of wonderful. Terrifying, but wonderful. Maya turned to face him. This is really happening, isn't it? Tonight, the dinner, Whitmore. This is really happening, Ethan confirmed. He sat down on the edge of the bed and Maya noticed the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. Are you ready? No, Maya said honestly. But I don't think that matters anymore. No, Ethan agreed. It doesn't. He was quiet for a moment, then, I want to thank you for being kind to Claire, for handling her questions the way you did. She's already attached to you, which is going to make the end of this harder. But watching you with her last night, you were genuine. That means more than you know. She's easy to be genuine with, Maya said. She's an incredible kid. She is, Ethan's voice was soft. Her mother would have loved seeing who she's becoming. They sat there in the afternoon light, two strangers about to pretend to be in love, and for a moment, Maya let herself imagine what it would be like if this were real, if she actually were engaged to this complicated, driven man, if Claire actually were going to be part of her life beyond these 2 weeks. The fantasy was dangerous. Maya pushed it away. We should get ready, she said. What time do we need to leave? 6:30. The restaurant is in Tribeca, private room. It'll be us, Whitmore, and his wife Eleanor. Intimate. Ethan stood. One more thing. I had this made for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a ring that made Maya's breath catch. Not a traditional engagement ring, nothing so obvious. Instead, a stunning emerald surrounded by small diamonds, elegant and unique. Whitmore will notice if you're not wearing a ring, Ethan explained. I chose emerald because it felt like you, green, growing things, life. He paused. If you hate it, we can get something else. I don't hate it, Maya whispered. It's beautiful. Ethan took the ring out, reached for her hand. May I? Maya nodded, unable to speak, watched as Ethan slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, caught the light and threw green fire. And even though she knew it was fake, even though this was all performance, the weight of it on her hand felt significant, real. There, Ethan said quietly, still holding her hand. Now we look the part. He left her to get ready, and Maya sat alone with the ring on her finger and the green dress hanging in the closet. In 3 hours, she would walk into a restaurant and lie to a stranger about loving a man she'd known for less than 2 days. The terrifying part wasn't the lying. It was how easy she suspected it was going to be. The car service arrived precisely at 6:30, and Maya discovered that walking in heels on marble floors required a completely different skill set than navigating greenhouse aisles in work boots. Ethan steadied her elbow as they crossed the lobby, his hand warm through the thin silk of her dress, and she was grateful for the contact even as it made her hyper-aware of every place their bodies touched. Breathe, he murmured as they slid into the back seat. You look perfect. You're going to be perfect. I'm terrified, Maya admitted. Good. So am I. Ethan's smile was tight. Whitmore can smell overconfidence from a mile away. A little nervousness makes us human. The drive to Tribeca took 23 minutes through evening traffic, and Maya spent every one of them running through their fabricated history. 6 months since they met. First date at that Italian place. He proposed at the Botanical Garden on a Sunday morning when the crowds were thin and the light was golden. She'd said yes before he finished asking. They were planning a small wedding, something intimate, just family and close friends. They hadn't set a date yet because of his company's demands, but soon, definitely soon. The lies tasted like ash in her mouth. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't need a sign because if you had to ask where it was, you couldn't afford to eat there anyway. Ethan helped her out of the car, and Maya felt the weight of the emerald ring on her finger like an anchor, or maybe a lifeline. She couldn't quite tell which. "Mr. Hale, Miss Collins," the maitre d' greeted them like old friends. "Mr. Whitmore and his wife are already seated. Right this way." The private dining room was all exposed brick and soft lighting, a single table set for 4 with flowers Maya recognized as rare South American orchids. The irony wasn't lost on her. Through the windows, the city stretched out in a carpet of lights, beautiful and indifferent to the small dramas playing out inside its towers. Gregory Whitmore rose as they entered, and Maya's first thought was that he looked exactly like someone who controlled billions of dollars should look. Distinguished silver hair, perfectly tailored suit, eyes that missed nothing. His wife Eleanor was elegant in the way that came from decades of practice, her smile warm but assessing. "Ethan," Whitmore said, shaking his hand firmly. "It's good to see you again, and this must be the famous Maya we've heard so much about." "Infamous, perhaps?" Maya said, finding her voice. She extended her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Whitmore. Gregory, please, and this is my wife Eleanor." They settled into their seats, and a waiter appeared immediately with champagne. Maya took a glass she had no intention of drinking, needing something to do with her hands. Ethan's hand found hers under the table, squeezed gently. A reminder, or maybe reassurance, possibly both. "I have to say," Eleanor spoke first, her voice cultured and kind. "When Gregory told me Ethan had finally found someone, I was thrilled. We'd begun to worry he was married to his work." She smiled at Maya. "How did you two meet?" Ethan was rather vague in Tokyo. Maya felt Ethan tense beside her, but she'd prepared for this. "A sustainable technology conference," she said smoothly. "I was there presenting research on bio-integrated building materials, using living plant systems as part of architectural design. Ethan was the keynote speaker. I cornered him during the networking reception to argue about his approach to carbon capture." "She told me I was thinking too small," Ethan added, and Maya heard the affection he'd layered into his voice. "Perfect. Practiced. Said that if we really wanted to revolutionize sustainable building, we needed to stop seeing plants as decoration and start seeing them as infrastructure." "I may have been slightly aggressive about it," Maya admitted. "Apparently telling a billionaire CEO that his entire business model is missing the obvious is not the best networking strategy." Eleanor laughed, delighted. "Oh, I like her already. What did you do, Ethan?" "Asked her to dinner so she could explain exactly how wrong I was." Ethan looked at Maya, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. Turned out she was right about most of it, and brilliant about all of it. I couldn't stop listening to her talk. The lie was so smooth, so believable, that Maya almost forgot it wasn't real. Almost forgot that they hadn't met at a conference, hadn't had that first dinner, hadn't fallen into conversation that stretched until the restaurant closed around them. But the way Ethan was looking at her made her wish desperately that they had. "A woman who challenges you intellectually," Whitmore said thoughtfully. "That's rare. Important." He studied them both with those keen eyes. "My Eleanor did the same for me. Still does, 43 years later. It's what makes a partnership work. Someone who makes you think differently." "Maya makes me think differently about everything," Ethan said quietly. And Maya couldn't tell anymore if he was acting. Dinner progressed through courses that were more art than food. Each played a carefully composed masterpiece that Maya barely tasted. The conversation flowed easily, Eleanor asking about Maya's work, Whitmore discussing the sustainable technology sector, Ethan navigating questions about his company with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. But underneath the pleasant surface, Maya could feel Whitmore watching, testing, Every question was calibrated to reveal something, every pause loaded with meaning. This wasn't just dinner, it was an audition, and they were performing for the highest stakes imaginable. "Tell me, Maya," Whitmore said during the third course, "what made you say yes? To Ethan's proposal, I mean. He's a complicated man building a complicated empire. That's not an easy life to sign up for." The room went very quiet. Maya felt Ethan's hand tighten on hers under the table, felt the weight of everything riding on her answer. She could give them the romantic version, talk about love, about connection, about knowing when you've found the one. It's what Whitmore probably expected. But Maya had spent 2 days watching Ethan with his daughter, seeing the exhaustion he tried to hide, understanding the impossible weight he carried. And suddenly, the truth, or at least a version of it, felt more powerful than any lie. "Because he lets me see the complicated parts," Maya said finally. "A lot of men in his position would want to hide the difficult pieces, would want their partner to see only the success and the confidence. But Ethan doesn't do that. He talks about the challenges, the fears, the moments when he doesn't have all the answers. He's building something extraordinary, yes, but he's also raising a daughter alone and trying to honor a promise he made to his late wife. And he doesn't pretend any of it is easy." She looked at Ethan, let herself speak to him instead of to Whitmore. "I said yes because he trusts me enough to be honest about the hard parts. That's not complicated. That's partnership." Ethan's eyes had gone dark, intense, and Maya couldn't read his expression. Couldn't tell if she'd gone too far, revealed too much, broken some unspoken rule of their arrangement. Then Eleanor pressed her napkin to her eyes, blinking back tears. "Oh, that's beautiful. Gregory, did you hear that?" "I did." Whitmore's voice was gruff. "You're right, my dear. I like her very much." The rest of dinner passed in a blur of warmth and approval. Eleanor asked about wedding plans, and Maya found herself improvising details about venues and flowers, and a ceremony small enough to feel intimate but meaningful enough to honor what they were building together. Ethan added comments that fit perfectly with her vision, their invented future taking shape in real time. It should have felt wrong, should have tasted like deception with every word. But sitting there, Ethan's hand in hers, building this fantasy together, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they were creating something neither of them had known they wanted until they started describing it aloud. "There is one matter we should discuss," Whitmore said as dessert arrived, some confection involving chocolate and gold leaf that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. "I want to be transparent about my investment criteria, Ethan. I'm sure you've surmised that I don't simply fund companies. I invest in legacies, in foundations that will last beyond quarterly earnings reports." "I understand," Ethan said carefully. "Which is why I need to know this is real." Whitmore's gaze moved between them. "I've seen too many business partnerships masquerading as personal relationships. Too many arrangements of convenience that crumble under pressure. I invest in couples who are genuinely building a life together, because that's the kind of stability that translates to long-term success." He paused. "So I need to ask directly, is this engagement real? Are you two truly committed to a future together?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Maya felt her heart hammering against her ribs, felt Ethan's hand go very still in hers. This was it. The moment they'd been preparing for, the lie they'd rehearsed. All they had to do was say yes, maintain the fiction, secure the investment, but Whitmore was watching them with those penetrating eyes, and Maya knew instinctively that he'd spot a rehearsed answer, knew that anything too polished would ring false. "I can't predict the future," Maya heard herself say. "I can't promise that everything will work out exactly the way we hope, because life doesn't come with those guarantees. But what I can tell you is that what Ethan and I have found together, this partnership, this understanding, this willingness to be honest with each other, even when it's hard, that's real. Whether it lasts 50 years or changes into something different right now in this moment, it's genuine." It was the truth. Somehow, impossibly, it was the truth. They had found a kind of partnership in the past 2 days, had built something honest inside their dishonest arrangement. Maya didn't know what to call it, couldn't define the boundaries of it, but it was real in a way that mattered. Ethan looked at her and Maya saw recognition in his eyes, saw him understanding what she was offering, not a perfect lie, but an imperfect truth. "Maya's right," he said quietly. I can't make promises about forever. I made those promises once before, and I learned that the universe doesn't honor them. But I can promise that I see her, really see her, her brilliance, her passion, her stubborn refusal to settle for less than what she knows she's capable of achieving. And I can promise that I'm committed to supporting that, to being the kind of partner who helps her reach her potential for as long as she'll let me. Whitmore studied them for a long moment. The silence stretched until Maya thought she might scream from the tension of it. Then he smiled. Good. That's what I needed to hear. Not blind promises, but honest acknowledgement that you're choosing each other with full awareness of the risks. He raised his champagne glass. To partnerships built on truth. May they flourish into something extraordinary. They clinked glasses, and Maya's hand shook slightly as she brought the champagne to her lips. They'd done it. They'd convinced him. The investment would come through. Ethan's company would be saved. Claire's future would be secure. So why did Maya feel like she'd just promised something far more binding than a 2-week contract? The evening wound down with talk of next steps, of contracts to be reviewed and terms to be negotiated. Whitmore's lawyers would be in touch, the formal investment documents prepared. There would be other events, he mentioned, a charity gala next weekend, perhaps dinner with some of his other portfolio companies. He wanted Ethan and Maya to meet the community they'd be joining. One more thing, Whitmore said as they prepared to leave. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out an envelope. Eleanor and I have a tradition. For every couple we invest in, we make a small request. Call it eccentric if you like, but it matters to us. Ethan took the envelope, opened it. Maya watched his expression shift. Surprise, confusion, something else she couldn't quite name. What is it? Eleanor asked her husband gently. We'd like you to spend a weekend at our estate in Connecticut, Whitmore explained. 2 weeks from now. Just the two of you. No business discussions. No company talk. Our home has extensive gardens. I think you'll appreciate them, Maya. And it's the kind of place where you can simply be together without the demands of the city. He paused. We find that couples reveal their true nature when they're removed from their usual context. And we'd like to see who you both are when you're not performing for investors. Maya felt ice slide down her spine. A weekend away. Just the two of them. Playing engaged in a setting where they couldn't retreat to separate rooms, couldn't hide behind professional distance. It was exactly the kind of test she'd feared. We'd be honored, Ethan said smoothly, but Maya felt the tension radiating from him. Thank you for the invitation. They said their goodbyes, promised to confirm dates, accepted Eleanor's warm embrace and Whitmore's firm handshake. Then they were in the car again, the city sliding by outside the windows, and Maya couldn't bring herself to look at Ethan. A weekend, she said finally. That wasn't part of the contract. I know. Ethan's voice was strained. I didn't anticipate. I thought it would be dinners, public events, not intimate observation, Maya finished. He's going to watch us, Ethan, really watch us. And if we slip, if he sees anything that doesn't fit, we lose everything. We won't slip. But Ethan didn't sound convinced. They rode in silence for several blocks. Maya watched the city lights blur past, her mind racing through scenarios, trying to calculate how they could possibly maintain this fiction for an entire weekend without cracks showing. Maya, Ethan's voice was quiet. What you said tonight, about partnership, about being honest even when it's hard, did you mean that? I don't know, Maya admitted. I was trying to convince Whitmore, but somewhere in the middle of saying it, I realized I wasn't lying. We have found something real in this arrangement. I just don't know what to call it. Neither do I. Ethan turned to look at her, and in the dim light of the car, his expression was raw. But I think we need to figure it out, because that weekend in Connecticut, we can't fake our way through that. Not at the level Whitmore will be watching. So what do we do? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, we stop pretending this is just business. We acknowledge that somewhere between the broken orchid and tonight's dinner, this stopped being a simple transaction, and we decide what we actually want this to be. Maya's heart was hammering. Ethan, we have a contract. Terms. This was supposed to be temporary. I know what the contract says. Ethan's voice was intense now. But contracts don't account for complications, for 7-year-old girls who get attached to plant scientists, for conversations in kitchens that feel more natural than they should, for looking across a dinner table and realizing the lies you're telling are becoming truths before you're ready to admit it. Are you saying? Maya couldn't finish the question. I'm saying I don't know anymore. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I'm saying that when Whitmore asked if this was real, I wanted to tell him yes. Not because of the investment, not because of the company, but because sitting there with your hand in mine felt right in a way nothing has felt right since Jennifer died. And that terrifies me. The confession hung between them, honest and dangerous. Maya knew she should pull back, should remind them both of the boundaries they'd established. This was supposed to be professional, clean, a simple exchange of services, but nothing about this felt simple anymore. It terrifies me too, she whispered, because in 2 weeks, this is supposed to end. I'm supposed to go to Ashford, you're supposed to move forward with your company, and we're supposed to go back to being strangers who made a mutually beneficial arrangement, but I don't know how to do that anymore. The car pulled up to Ethan's building. Neither of them moved. So what do we do? Ethan asked, echoing her earlier question. Maya looked at the emerald ring on her finger, felt its weight, thought about Claire sleeping upstairs and the weekend in Connecticut looming ahead, and all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. We tell the truth, she said finally, to Whitmore, tomorrow. We call him and we explain that the engagement started as an arrangement, but something shifted. We're honest about the complexity and we let him decide if that's enough. He'll pull the investment, Ethan said flatly. Everything we've built tonight, everything we've convinced him of, it falls apart the moment we admit we lied. Maybe. Maya turned to face him fully. Or maybe he meant what he said about partnerships built on truth. Maybe honesty, even messy, complicated honesty, is worth more to him than a perfect fiction. That's a massive gamble. It is, Maya's voice was steady. But it's the only way forward that doesn't destroy both of us. Because if we keep lying, if we go to that weekend and pretend everything is simple when it's not, we're going to crack. And when we do, Whitmore will see it. But if we tell the truth now, if we lay out exactly what this has become and ask him to invest in the potential of it rather than the certainty, we might actually have a chance. Ethan stared at her, and Maya could see him calculating, weighing risks, running through scenarios the way he probably did with every major business decision. I've built my entire career on calculated risks, he said slowly, on seeing opportunities that others miss and having the courage to act on them. But this, he stopped, shook his head. This is different. If I'm wrong, I don't just lose my company, I lose Claire's future, everything I've worked for. I know. Maya reached for his hand, held it tight. But if you're right, if Whitmore values authenticity the way he claims to, then telling the truth might be the thing that actually saves you. Not despite the complexity, but because of it. They sat there in the back of the car, hands clasped, the city humming around them. Maya could feel Ethan's pulse racing beneath her fingers, could feel her own heart beating in sync with his. This was insane, reckless, exactly the kind of decision neither of them would normally make. Okay, Ethan said finally. We tell him tomorrow. We schedule a meeting, we lay out everything, and we trust that honesty matters more than perfection. Okay. All, Maya echoed, relief and terror flooding through her in equal measure. They went upstairs, moved through the quiet apartment trying not to wake Claire, stood in the hallway between their separate rooms, neither quite willing to say goodnight. Maya, Ethan said quietly, whatever happens tomorrow, thank you. For tonight, for everything you said, for being willing to take this risk with me. Even if it all falls apart, thank you. We're partners, Maya said, and meant it. Partners don't let each other face impossible things alone. She went to her room, closed the door, leaned against it trying to catch her breath. Somewhere in the past 48 hours, her carefully planned life had veered completely off course. She was standing in a penthouse wearing a dress that cost more than her car, with an emerald ring on her finger and a fake engagement that felt increasingly real, about to stake everything on the wild hope that truth might actually matter to a billionaire investor. It was insane. It was terrifying. And Maya had never felt more certain of anything in her life. Morning came too early and too bright. Maya woke to find a text from Ethan already waiting. Meeting with Whitmore scheduled for 11 a.m. His office. We tell him everything. She showed up to breakfast to find Ethan already on his third cup of coffee, tension radiating from every line of his body. Claire was eating cereal and talking about a field trip, oblivious to the adult anxiety crackling through the kitchen. "You okay?" Maya asked quietly while Claire was distracted by her iPad. "No," Ethan admitted. "I've been up since 4 running scenarios. Every single one ends with us losing everything." "Not every single one," Maya corrected. "There's the one where Whitmore respects our honesty and invests anyway." "That's not a scenario. That's a fantasy." "Maybe." Maya poured herself coffee, stood next to him at the counter. "But sometimes fantasies are just possibilities we're too scared to believe in." Ethan looked at her, something shifting in his expression. "When did you become an optimist?" "When I agreed to fake marry a billionaire to save his company," Maya said dryly. "Apparently my judgment is completely compromised." He laughed despite himself, and some of the tension left his shoulders. "Mine too." They got ready in a fog of nervous energy. Maya dressed in one of Victoria's selections, a navy dress that looked professional but approachable. Ethan wore a suit but skipped the tie, some concession to informality that made him look younger, more vulnerable. The car ride to Whitmore's office felt like riding toward an execution. Maya's hands shook as she smoothed her dress, and Ethan's knuckles were white where he gripped his phone. "We could still back out," he said suddenly. "Tell Whitmore we need to reschedule, buy ourselves time to think this through." "And spend the next 2 weeks drowning in anxiety?" Maya shook her head. "No. We do this now. Whatever happens, at least we'll know." Whitmore's office was in a historic building in Midtown. All dark wood and leather furniture that smelled of old money and older power. His assistant, a woman who looked like she could run a small country, showed them to a conference room with windows overlooking the city. "Mr. Whitmore will be with you shortly," she said. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Whiskey," Maya muttered under her breath. Ethan's lips twitched despite everything. "We're fine, thank you." They waited in silence. Ethan paced. Maya sat very still, hands folded in her lap, trying to project a calm she absolutely didn't feel. The emerald ring caught the light, throwing green fire, and Maya found herself turning it around and around her finger. "Stop," Ethan said gently. "You're going to wear the setting down." "Sorry. Nervous habit." "I know." He came to sit beside her, took her hand. "Maya, whatever happens in the next hour, I meant what I said last night. I'm grateful for this. For you. Even if it all falls apart." Before Maya could respond, the door opened. Gregory Whitmore entered, and behind him, unexpectedly, was Eleanor. They both wore pleasant expressions, but Maya could see the curiosity in their eyes, the questions about why Ethan had requested this meeting so urgently. "This is a surprise," Whitmore said, settling into a chair across from them. "Your message said it was important. Eleanor insisted on joining. I hope you don't mind." "Not at all," Ethan said. His voice was steady, but Maya felt his hand trembling slightly in hers. I need to tell you something. About last night. About our engagement." Whitmore's expression didn't change, but something sharpened in his eyes. "I'm listening." Ethan took a breath. And then, with the courage of someone who had everything to lose and chose honesty anyway, he told the truth. He explained the lie in Tokyo, the desperation that led to it, the impossible position he'd found himself in when Whitmore requested to meet his fiancée. He told them about the collision in the lobby, about Maya and the broken orchid, about the contract and the arrangement and the Ashford access offered in exchange for 2 weeks of pretending. "I brought Maya into this as a business transaction," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. "I asked her to lie to you because I was terrified of losing everything I'd built, everything I'd promised my daughter. It was calculated and desperate and wrong, and I'm not going to sit here and defend it." Whitmore's expression had gone very still. Eleanor's hand had moved to her husband's arm, but her eyes were on Maya, waiting. "But somewhere between signing that contract and last night's dinner," Ethan continued, "something changed. The things Maya said at dinner about partnership, about honesty, about commitment even when the future is uncertain. Those weren't lies. We may have started this as an arrangement, but what's developed between us is real. Complicated and messy and completely unplanned, but real. He looked at Maya, and she saw fear and hope and desperate honesty in his eyes. So I'm here to tell you the truth, Ethan finished, because continuing to lie to you feels like betraying what Maya and I have actually found together. You said you invest in partnerships built on truth. I'm asking you to invest in one that started with lies but chose truth anyway, even knowing it might cost us everything. The silence that followed was suffocating. Whitmore sat very still, his expression unreadable. Eleanor was watching her husband, clearly deferring to his judgment. Finally, Whitmore spoke. How long have you actually known each other? 3 days, Maya said quietly. The collision was 2 days ago. And the feelings you described last night are real, Maya confirmed. Or at least the foundation of them is real. I can't tell you we're in love after 3 days. But I can tell you that I see him, really see him, in a way I haven't seen anyone before. And that terrifies me as much as it intrigues me. Whitmore leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers. Maya felt Ethan's hand tighten on hers, felt her own heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Do you know why I invest the way I do? Whitmore asked finally. Why I care so much about personal partnerships alongside business ventures? Neither of them answered. Because 43 years ago, I built a company that should have made me wealthy beyond measure. The technology was sound, the market was ready, everything aligned perfectly. Whitmore's voice was distant, remembering. But I'd neglected my personal life, poured everything into work, sacrificed my marriage, barely knew my own children. And when the company went public and I had more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, I realized I had no one to share it with, no foundation, no partnership, just wealth and loneliness. He looked at Eleanor, and the love in his eyes was so raw it hurt to witness. Eleanor saved me, he continued. Not my company, that was already successful. She saved me from myself. Taught me that building something meaningful requires more than just business acumen. It requires the courage to be honest, even when honesty is costly, especially then. Whitmore turned back to Ethan and Maya. What you've done, coming here, telling me the truth when you could have maintained the comfortable lie, that took extraordinary courage, the kind of integrity I look for in people I invest in. He paused. But I need to know something. This arrangement, this contract between you. Are you ending it? Ethan and Maya looked at each other. They hadn't discussed this, hadn't planned beyond telling the truth. I don't know, Ethan admitted. The contract said 2 weeks, but what's developed between us doesn't fit neatly into contract terms anymore. Then let me propose something different, Whitmore said. I'll make my investment, full amount, terms we discussed, but with one condition. Maya held her breath. The weekend at our Connecticut estate. You still come, but not as part of a performance, as yourselves. 2 people who found each other in unconventional circumstances and are trying to figure out what that means. No pretending you have all the answers, just honest exploration of what you might build together. He looked between them, his expression gentle now. I don't invest in perfect relationships, Whitmore said. I invest in honest ones, in people willing to choose truth over comfort. You've proven you have that courage. Now I want to see if you have the courage to follow it through. Ethan's eyes had gone bright. You're still investing, even after, especially after, Whitmore corrected. You had every reason to maintain the lie, every incentive, and you chose integrity anyway. That tells me far more about your character than any perfect engagement story ever could. Eleanor smiled, warm and knowing. Plus, I rather enjoyed watching you 2 last night. The way you look at each other, the way you communicate without words, that's not something you can fake, contract or not. I told Gregory as much on the drive home. So we have a deal? Maya asked, her voice shaking. We have a deal, Whitmore confirmed. He stood, extended his hand to Ethan. I'll have my lawyers draw up the investment documents. We'll schedule that Connecticut weekend in 2 weeks, and I'll look forward to seeing what you build together, both in business and in life. They shook hands. Eleanor hugged them both. And then Maya and Ethan were back in the elevator, back in the car, sitting in stunned silence as the city moved past the windows. Did that just happen? Maya whispered. I think so, Ethan said. He sounded dazed. He's investing. He's actually investing. Because we told the truth. Because we told the truth, Ethan repeated, wonder in his voice. They rode in silence for several blocks, the relief slowly settling over them like a blanket. The company was saved. Claire's future was secure. The impossible gamble had paid off. But underneath the relief, Maya felt something else, something heavier and more complicated. Ethan, she said carefully, what are we doing, really? The contract said 2 weeks. Whitmore's investing regardless. We could end this now, part ways. You could move forward with the company, and I could start at Ashford and... Is that what you want? Ethan's voice was sharp. I don't know what I want, Maya admitted. 3 days ago I knew exactly who I was and what I was working toward. Now everything's different, and I can't think straight, and Claire keeps asking me to help with her science projects. And you look at me like... She stopped, shook her head. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. Ethan turned to face her. But I know I don't want to end it. Not yet. Not when we haven't even figured out what it is. So what are you proposing? Exactly what Whitmore suggested. 2 weeks. Not because of a contract, but because we want to see where this goes. We keep living together, keep getting to know each other. We go to Connecticut, and we're honest about the fact that we're figuring this out as we go. And at the end of 2 weeks, we decide together what happens next. Maya's heart was racing. And if it doesn't work, if we realize this was just intensity and proximity, and we're not actually compatible, then we part as friends. You go to Ashford with my full support. I focus on my company, and Claire learns that sometimes adults try things that don't work out. No harm, no regrets. And if it does work? Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Ethan reached for her hand, threaded his fingers through hers. Then we figure out what comes after 2 weeks. Together. The car pulled up to his building. Their building, for the next 2 weeks at least. Maya looked at their joined hands, at the emerald ring that no longer felt like a prop, at the man beside her who'd risked everything for honesty. Okay, she said. 2 weeks. Real this time. Real this time, Ethan agreed. They went upstairs to find Claire and Rosa in the kitchen, and the little girl's face lit up when she saw them. You're back. Did your meeting go good? Can Maya help me with my plant project for science class now? Ethan laughed, some of the tension finally leaving his body. Yes, Bug, the meeting went very well, and I think Maya would be happy to help with your project. Maya knelt down to Claire's level. What kind of project are we talking about? We have to grow something from a seed and track its progress for a month. Claire was bouncing with excitement. Can we grow something rare, like your special orchid? Maya felt her throat go tight. Orchids don't grow from seeds the way other plants do, but I have an idea. How would you like to grow a moonflower? They're night blooming, and they're absolutely magical when they open. Magical flowers, yes. Then let's go shopping for supplies, Maya said. Your dad can come too if he promises not to let his phone distract him in the plant nursery. Ethan held up his hands. I promise. Phone stays in my pocket.
That's a must, mate.
They spent the afternoon in a Brooklyn greenhouse, Claire asking a million questions while Maya explained pollination and photosynthesis and the miracle of seeds that contained entire futures in packages smaller than her fingernail. Ethan watched them both, and Maya caught him smiling at moments when he thought she wasn't looking. That night, after Claire was asleep, they sat on the balcony overlooking the park. The city stretched out below them, all light and possibility. Thank you, Ethan said quietly. For today, for your courage, for being willing to risk everything on honesty. We both risked it, Maya corrected, but it was your idea. I would have kept lying if you hadn't pushed me toward the truth. Maya turned to look at him, this complicated man who was becoming less of a stranger with every hour they spent together. Can I ask you something? What happens after 2 weeks if this does work? I'm supposed to start at Ashford. You're running a company. Claire needs stability. How do we make any of this practical? I don't know, Ethan admitted, but I know I want to try. Maybe you do your research at Ashford and come back on weekends. Maybe we figure out a way for you to work closer to the city. Maybe we discover that long distance doesn't work and we adjust. The point is, we figure it out together. No more pretending we have all the answers. No more pretending, Maya agreed. She leaned against his shoulder, and Ethan's arm came around her, steady and warm. They sat like that for a long time, watching the city lights, feeling the weight of what they'd chosen. 2 weeks. 14 days to figure out if what they'd found in the chaos of collision and contracts and desperate lies could become something real enough to build a future on. It should have felt impossible. Instead, sitting there with Ethan's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Maya thought maybe, just maybe, it was exactly possible enough to be worth trying. The next 2 weeks unfolded in a rhythm that felt both surreal and startlingly natural. Maya woke each morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of Ethan moving through the kitchen, preparing breakfast while Claire chattered about her dreams. She fell asleep each night in her borrowed room, the emerald ring on her nightstand catching moonlight, wondering how something that started as performance had become the most authentic thing in her life. But authenticity, Maya was learning, came with complications. On day 5, Claire's teacher called requesting a parent-teacher conference. Ethan was in back-to-back meetings he couldn't reschedule, and Rosa had a family emergency. Maya found herself sitting in a tiny classroom chair meant for 7-year-olds, listening to Miss Peterson explain that Claire had been telling everyone about her father's new fiancée, who knew everything about plants. "She talks about you constantly," the teacher said, her tone gentle but concerned. "I just wanted to check in, make sure this is a stable situation. Claire's been through so much loss already. I'd hate to see her get attached to someone who might not be staying." The words landed like stones in Maya's chest. She opened her mouth to explain what? That she was living with Ethan under a contract that had evolved into something undefined? That she had no idea if she'd still be part of Claire's life in a month? "I understand your concern," Maya said finally. "Claire has been through loss, and I promise you, whether I'm in her life long-term or not, I will never disappear without explanation. She deserves better than that. They both do." Ms. Peterson studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "That's good to hear. For what it's worth, I haven't seen Claire this animated about anything since her mother passed. Whatever you're doing, it's making a difference." Maya left the school with her hands shaking. She called Ethan from the sidewalk, and he answered immediately, despite the meeting background noise she could hear. "What's wrong? Is Claire okay?" "She's fine. I'm fine. Everyone's fine." Maya took a breath. "But we need to talk, tonight, after Claire goes to bed." She heard the shift in his breathing, the worry. "What happened?" We need to talk about what we're doing, what this means for Claire. I'll explain everything tonight." The rest of the day crawled past. Maya tried to focus on the grant proposal she was drafting for Ashford, but her mind kept circling back to the teacher's words. Claire was getting attached. And if Maya was being honest with herself, the attachment wasn't one-sided. She'd spent the past week helping with homework, explaining photosynthesis using kitchen ingredients, reading bedtime stories about brave scientists and impossible discoveries. She'd carved out a space in this makeshift family, and leaving it was starting to feel less like freedom and more like loss. Ethan came home at 7, looking exhausted. He kissed Claire's forehead, asked about her day, listened patiently to her detailed explanation of the lunch trade economy in her second-grade class. Through dinner, his eyes kept finding Maya's, questioning and worried in equal measure. After Claire was asleep, they retreated to the balcony. It had become their space, the place where they spoke truths too complicated for anywhere else. Ethan brought wine this time. Maya thought they might need it. "Tell me," he said simply. Maya told him about the conference, about Ms. Peterson's concerns, about the weight of Claire's attachment, and her own uncertainty about how to navigate it responsibly. Ethan listened without interrupting, his jaw getting tighter with every sentence. "I knew this would happen," he said when she finished. "I knew Claire would get attached. I just thought—" He stopped, shook his head. "I don't know what I thought. That we could keep this temporary somehow. That she wouldn't notice we were figuring things out as we went." "Kids notice everything," Maya said quietly. "And they deserve honesty about what they're seeing." "So what do we tell her?" Ethan's voice was raw. "That the woman she's been asking to help with science projects might not be around in a month? That I brought someone into her life without knowing if they'd stay?" "We tell her the truth. Maya set down her wine glass, turned to face him fully. Not the complicated adult version with all our doubts and fears, but the simple truth that you and I met recently, that we're spending time together to see if we work well as partners, and that no matter what happens between us, I care about her, and I won't vanish without saying goodbye. Ethan was quiet for a long time. She'll ask questions about whether you're staying, whether we're getting married for real. Then we answer honestly. We don't know yet. We're figuring it out. Children can handle uncertainty better than adults think. What they can't handle is lies and broken promises. Maya reached for his hand. I won't lie to her, Ethan, not even to make things easier. I know. He squeezed her hand. That's one of the things He stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. That's one of the things I value most about you. Your commitment to honesty, even when it costs you something. Maya heard what he didn't say, felt the weight of the unspoken words hanging between them. They'd been dancing around it for days, this thing growing between them that was too big to ignore and too fragile to name. Every shared breakfast, every evening helping Claire with homework, every quiet conversation after bedtime had added another layer to the foundation they were building. But neither of them had been brave enough to acknowledge it aloud. We should talk about Connecticut, Maya said, changing the subject because the other conversation felt too dangerous. Whitmore's estate. We leave in 2 days, and I'm not sure what to expect. Ethan's laugh was hollow. Neither am I. I've been to the estate once before, years ago, for a portfolio company dinner. It's beautiful, isolated, exactly the kind of place where you can't hide behind professional distance or busy schedules. That's what worries me, Maya admitted. In the apartment, we have structure. Claire, work, separate rooms, but a weekend away, just the two of us. That's different. More intimate. What if we can't maintain the boundaries we've built? What boundaries? Ethan's voice was gentle. Maya, we've been living together for nearly 2 weeks. We have dinner together every night. You help me with my daughter's bedtime routine. Yesterday, you fell asleep on my shoulder while we were watching that documentary about mycorrhizal networks. What boundaries do you think we're maintaining? Maya felt heat creep up her neck. She had fallen asleep on his shoulder, had woken up with his jacket draped over her, Ethan still sitting next to her, even though his back must have been killing him from the awkward position. He'd smiled when she stirred, said nothing about the fact that she drooled slightly on his expensive shirt. I don't know, she said quietly. I guess I thought as long as we kept sleeping in separate rooms, as long as we didn't... She stopped, unsure how to finish. Didn't what? Didn't acknowledge that this stopped being about contracts and Ashford access somewhere around day 3? Ethan turned to face her fully. I'm going to say something, and you can tell me if I'm completely misreading this situation. But I need to say it before Connecticut, before we spend a weekend pretending we have all the answers when we clearly don't. Maya's heart was hammering. Okay. I'm falling for you. The words came out rushed, like Ethan had been holding them back for days, and finally couldn't anymore. Not pretend falling, not arrangement falling, actually falling, in the way that keeps me up at night wondering how I got this lucky and this terrified in the same breath. And I know it's fast, I know we agreed to figure this out slowly, but I need you to know that when I look at you with my daughter, when I watch you explain plant biology like it's the most magical thing in the world, when you challenge me to be better and braver and more honest, I'm not pretending anymore. I haven't been for a while. Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this man who'd just laid his heart out like an offering and was waiting for her to either accept it or destroy it. Say something, Ethan said, his voice cracking slightly. Please, even if it's just that I'm an idiot who's moving too fast and ruining everything. You're not an idiot, Maya whispered. You're terrifying. Terrifying? Because I feel it too. The admission came out broken, and I don't know what to do with that. I came here for Ashford access, for research opportunities, for a chance to do work that matters. I didn't come here to fall for a widowed father who makes breakfast like a professional chef and reads stories to his daughter in different voices and looks at me like I'm something precious instead of convenient. Ethan's eyes had gone dark, intense. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. Maya stood abruptly, needed space to think. 2 weeks ago, I had a plan. A clear, achievable plan. Work at Verdant Solutions, save money, apply to programs until someone gave me a chance. It wasn't exciting, but it was safe. Predictable. Now I'm living in a penthouse, wearing clothes I can't afford, getting attached to a little girl who's already lost too much, and falling for her father who needs me to help save his company and his family, and I don't know if I'm strong enough for any of it. She was crying now, tears sliding hot down her face. Everything she'd been holding back for 2 weeks, the fear, the hope, the overwhelming uncertainty, all of it came pouring out in a rush she couldn't control. Ethan was there in seconds, his arms around her, steady and warm and solid. "You are strong enough," he said fiercely. "Maya, you're the strongest person I've ever met. You destroyed a plant you'd worked on for 6 months, and instead of falling apart, you took responsibility and figured out how to move forward. You agreed to an insane arrangement with a stranger because you saw a way to help both of us. You called me out when I was going to keep lying to Whitmore. You promised my daughter honesty even when the truth is complicated. That's not weakness, that's extraordinary courage." Maya buried her face in his shoulder, breathed in the scent of him, coffee and expensive cologne and something uniquely Ethan. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of this. Of us. Of wanting something I might not get to keep." "I'm scared too." Ethan's voice was rough against her hair. Terrified, actually. "I haven't let anyone this close since Jennifer died. Haven't wanted to. It felt safer to focus on Claire and the company and building a future I could control. But you—" He pulled back enough to look at her, his hands gentle on her face. "You made me remember that the best things in life aren't the ones you can control. They're the ones you choose anyway, despite the risk." Maya looked up at him, at this man who'd become so important so fast, and felt something shift. Some final wall crumbling, some last defense falling away. She'd been so focused on whether this could work, whether it was practical or sustainable or smart. But standing here in his arms, feeling his heartbeat against hers, she realized the question wasn't whether it was smart. It was whether it was worth it. And looking at Ethan, thinking about Claire and breakfast conversations and the way they'd built something real in the spaces between lies, Maya knew her answer. "Connecticut," she said quietly. "Let's go to Connecticut and be honest about all of it. The fear, the hope, the not knowing what comes next. Let's show Whitmore exactly who we are when we're not trying to be perfect." Ethan's smile was slow and genuine and absolutely beautiful. "Together?" "Together," Maya confirmed. He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. It wasn't their first kiss, they'd shared a few for appearances at the charity gala last weekend, but it was the first one that belonged only to them. The first one without an audience, without performance, without anything but honest want and careful hope. When they pulled apart, Maya was shaking. Ethan rested his forehead against hers, his breathing unsteady. "I should probably go to my room," he said, but he didn't move. "Probably," Maya agreed, also not moving. They stood there for another long moment before finally, reluctantly, separating. Maya went to her borrowed room, Ethan to his. But something had changed between them. Some line crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Maya lay in the darkness, her fingers tracing the emerald ring she'd started wearing even when she didn't need to, and thought about kisses and courage and the terrifying possibility that sometimes the risks you take become the foundations you build on. 2 days later, they loaded a bag into Ethan's car, just one, because they were only staying the weekend, and drove north toward Connecticut. Claire had been disappointed she couldn't come, but Ethan had explained gently that sometimes adults needed time alone to talk about important things. She'd accepted it with the easy resilience of children, making Maya and Ethan promise to bring her back a rock from the estate gardens for her collection. The drive took 2 hours through increasingly rural landscape, cities giving way to small towns, giving way to the kind of old money estates that had existed for generations. Whitmore's property was at the end of a long private road, all wrought iron gates and manicured lawns, and a house that looked like it belonged in an English novel. Eleanor greeted them at the door, warm and welcoming. "You made it! How was the drive? Gregory's in his study finishing a call, but he'll join us for dinner. Let me show you to your room." Maya caught Ethan's glance at the singular room, saw her own uncertainty reflected back. They'd discussed this, how to handle the sleeping arrangements without revealing too much too soon, but apparently Whitmore and Eleanor had made the decision for them. The room was beautiful in the way only truly old money could achieve. Antiques mixed with comfortable furniture, windows overlooking gardens that stretched toward a forest beyond, and one bed, large, expensive, perfectly made. "I hope this is all right," Eleanor said, clearly reading their hesitation. "We assumed, well, you're engaged after all, but if you'd prefer separate rooms—" "This is perfect," Ethan said smoothly. "Thank you, Eleanor." She left them alone, and Maya stared at the bed like it might bite. "Well, this is happening." "We could ask for separate rooms," Ethan offered. "I'm sure they'd understand." "And reveal that we're not actually comfortable sharing a bed even though we're supposedly engaged and planning a future together?" Maya shook her head. "No, we committed to honesty, but we don't need to broadcast every uncertainty. So we share the bed." Ethan's voice was carefully neutral. "Platonically." "Platonically," Maya agreed, trying to ignore the way her pulse jumped at the thought of sleeping next to him. They unpacked in awkward silence, Maya acutely aware of every movement, every breath. This was fine. They were adults. They could share a bed without it meaning anything they weren't ready for it to mean. Dinner that night was intimate and challenging in equal measure. Just the four of them around a table that could have seated 20, eating food prepared by Whitmore's personal chef, while conversation ranged from politics to philosophy to the nature of lasting partnerships. "Tell me," Whitmore said during dessert, his eyes on Maya, "what's the hardest part about loving someone building an empire?" Maya set down her fork, considered the question. "The same thing that's the best part, watching them care so much about something that it consumes them. Ethan's company isn't just a job to him. It's a promise he made to his late wife, a future he's building for his daughter. That kind of dedication is beautiful, but it also means there are days when the company needs him more than I do, and I have to be okay with coming second." "Are you?" Eleanor asked gently. "Okay with it?" "I'm learning to be." Maya glanced at Ethan. "I'm learning that love isn't about being first all the time. It's about understanding what matters most and supporting it, even when it's hard." Ethan's hand found hers under the table, squeezed. "For what it's worth, you're not second. You've never been second. But you're right that the company demands things from me I can't always control. And Maya handles that with more grace than I deserve." "What about your work?" Whitmore turned to Maya. "What demands does that make?" Maya thought about Ashford, about the research she'd be starting soon, about the hours she'd need to pour into projects that might not see results for years. "I haven't started at Ashford yet, so I don't know exactly. But I know research is all-consuming. There will be late nights, failed experiments, grants to chase, and papers to write. I'll need someone who understands that my work matters as much as theirs does." "And do you?" Whitmore asked Ethan. "Understand that?" "I'm learning to," Ethan echoed Maya's earlier words. "I spent 5 years thinking my work was the most important thing besides Claire, that nothing else could compete with building something lasting. Maya's teaching me that there are different kinds of important, and that supporting her dreams is just as crucial as protecting my own." The honesty of the exchange seemed to satisfy Whitmore. He raised his glass. "To learning, to partnerships that challenge us to grow, to choosing love even when it's complicated." They clinked glasses, and Maya felt the weight of the weekend settling over her. This was the test. Not whether they could pretend to be in love, but whether the real, messy thing growing between them could survive scrutiny from someone who'd built a lifetime on understanding relationships. After dinner, Whitmore and Eleanor showed them the gardens. Even in the fading light, they were spectacular. Precisely landscaped beds giving way to wild meadows, all of it designed to look effortlessly natural. Maya recognized rare specimens, cultivars that took years of careful breeding, investments of time and money that most people wouldn't comprehend. "Eleanor designed most of this," Whitmore said proudly. 40 years of work. Some of these trees we planted the year we were married." Eleanor smiled, her hand finding her husband's. "I wanted something that would outlast us. Something our grandchildren could walk through and know we built it together." Maya looked at the gardens with new eyes, seeing not just plants but a living testimony to partnership, to two people choosing to build something beautiful that would exist long after they were gone. "That's what I want," she said quietly. Not just success in my field, not just publications and breakthroughs. I want to build something that matters, that lasts. With Ethan? Eleanor's question was gentle. Maya looked at the man beside her, felt the weight of the question. They'd been honest about their uncertainty, about figuring things out as they went. But standing here in gardens built by 40 years of partnership, Maya felt the future stretching out before them. Not perfect, not certain, but possible. Yes, she said, and meant it. With Ethan. Later that night, they lay in the enormous bed with a carefully maintained distance between them. Maya stared at the ceiling, hyper-aware of Ethan's breathing beside her, the warmth of his body just inches away. Maya? His voice was quiet in the darkness. Yeah? What you said tonight, about wanting to build something lasting, did you mean it? Maya turned on her side to face him, could just make out his profile in the moonlight streaming through the windows. Yes, I meant it, all of it. Even though we've only known each other 2 weeks, even though we started with lies? Especially because of that. Maya reached out, found his hand. Most people spend months or years building up to honesty. We started there, not by choice, but we got there fast. We've seen each other's worst fears, biggest failures, most desperate moments. And we chose each other anyway. That feels more real than anything I've built slowly. Ethan pulled her closer, carefully, giving her room to resist if she wanted. Maya didn't resist. She let herself be drawn into his arms, let her head rest on his chest, listened to his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. I want to ask you something, Ethan said, and I need you to answer honestly, even if the answer isn't what I hope for. Okay? The contract expires in 5 days. Your position at Ashford starts in 3 weeks. After Connecticut, after we go home. What happens then? Do we keep doing this? Do we try to make it work long distance, or was this always going to end when the 2 weeks ran out? Maya felt her chest tighten. She'd been avoiding this question, pushing it away every time it surfaced. But here, in the dark, wrapped in Ethan's arms, she couldn't hide from it anymore. I don't want it to end, she whispered. But I don't know how to make it work either. Ashford is in Connecticut, over an hour from the city. The research will be intense, probably 60 hours a week at minimum. You have Claire, the company, responsibilities you can't relocate. How do we build something lasting when our lives are pulling us in different directions? We figure it out. Ethan's voice was firm. We compromise. Maybe you stay at Ashford during the week and come home on weekends. Maybe I bring Claire up to visit you, make it an adventure. Maybe we get creative with schedules and video calls and finding time in the margins. The point is, we don't give up just because it's hard. And if it doesn't work, if the distance is too much, then we adjust. We keep adjusting until we find something that does work, or until we both decide it's not sustainable. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. But I'm not ready to quit before we've even tried. Are you? Maya thought about everything she'd found in the past 2 weeks. The family dinners and bedtime stories, the balcony conversations and careful honesty, the way Claire looked at her like she might actually stay. The way Ethan made her believe she deserved someone who saw all of her, the brilliant parts and the messy parts, and chose her anyway. No, she said. I'm not ready to quit. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the careful distance they'd maintained finally abandoned. And when Maya woke in the pre-dawn light to find herself completely tangled with Ethan, his arm around her waist and her leg thrown over his, she didn't pull away. She let herself stay. The rest of the weekend unfolded in a series of moments that felt stolen from someone else's life. Long walks through Eleanor's gardens while Maya identified species and Whitmore asked pointed questions about their future plans. Quiet dinners where they practiced being honest about their fears instead of hiding behind perfect answers. A rainy afternoon spent in the library while Eleanor told stories about the early years of her marriage, the struggles and compromises that had eventually built something unshakable. The first 5 years were brutal, Eleanor confided while Whitmore and Ethan were off somewhere discussing investment strategies. Gregory was building his empire. I was trying to maintain my own career. We had 2 babies and no idea what we were doing. We almost didn't make it. What changed? Maya asked. We stopped trying to be perfect, stopped pretending we had all the answers. Eleanor's eyes were distant, remembering. We started getting honest about what we needed. even when those needs conflicted. And we learned that love isn't about never struggling. It's about choosing to struggle together instead of apart. The words stayed with Maya through the drive home Sunday evening, through the chaos of returning to find Claire bursting with stories about her weekend with Rosa, through the late-night conversation where they tried to map out logistics for the coming weeks. Ashford orientation is next Monday, Maya said, looking at the calendar on her phone. I should probably find an apartment near campus, get settled before research starts. Or, Ethan said carefully, you could keep your room here. Keep it as home base. Commute when you need to be on campus, stay here when you don't. Maya looked up at him. That's over an hour each way, and I'd still need somewhere to stay on late nights. So we figure it out. Get you a small place near Ashford for the nights you can't make it back. Keep most of your things here. Make this your primary residence and Ashford your workspace. He paused. Unless you don't want to. Unless you need more distance than that. Maya thought about what distance would give her. Independence, space to focus, freedom from the intensity of daily life with Ethan and Claire. Then she thought about what staying would give her. Family dinners and morning coffee, Claire's science questions, and Ethan's steady presence, the feeling of being part of something bigger than just her work. I want to stay, she said. Here, with you both. If that's really what you want, too. Ethan's smile was answer enough, but he said it anyway, clear and certain. It's what I want. It's what we both want. Claire asked me yesterday if you were going to be her new mom. I told her we were figuring that out together, but that you'd definitely be in her life. She seemed satisfied with that answer. New mom. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. That's a lot of responsibility. It is. Too much to ask after 2 weeks, probably, but Ethan reached for her hands. I'm not asking you to replace Jennifer. I'm asking if you might want to build something new with us. Something that honors what came before while creating space for what comes next. Maya looked at their joined hands, at the emerald ring that no longer felt like a prop. 2 weeks ago, she'd agreed to a contract, a simple exchange of services, temporary and transactional. She'd thought she understood exactly what she was signing up for. She'd been completely, beautifully wrong. Yes, she said. I want to build something new with you, with both of you. I have no idea if I'll be any good at it, but I want to try. Ethan kissed her then, deep and sure and full of promise. And when they finally pulled apart, Maya felt something settle in her chest. Not certainty. They still had so much to figure out, so many challenges ahead. But commitment. The choice to try, to struggle together, to build something lasting even when the path forward wasn't clear. The contract had 5 days left, but what they were building together had just begun. And for the first time since the collision in the lobby, since the broken orchid and the desperate arrangement, Maya let herself believe that some things were worth fighting for, even when, especially when, they terrified you. The contract officially expired on a Tuesday morning in March, and Maya marked the occasion by burning pancakes while Ethan was in the shower and Claire was hunting for her science homework. The smoke detector went off at exactly 7:15, its shrill scream piercing through the apartment and sending Maya into a panic that involved waving a dish towel at the ceiling while Claire stood in the doorway, giggling. You're supposed to flip them before they turn black, the 7-year-old advised seriously. Thank you, Chef, Maya said, dumping the charred disaster into the sink. Maybe we stick with cereal this morning. Ethan emerged from the hallway, hair still wet, following the smell of burnt batter. He took in the scene. Maya covered in flour, the smoke detector still blaring, Claire doubled over with laughter, and his expression shifted from concern to something softer, something that looked a lot like love. I'll get the detector, he said, reaching for the stepladder. You get the cereal, and maybe we add cooking lessons to our list of things to figure out. Our list is getting really long, Maya said, but she was smiling. The detector finally silenced. Ethan came down from the ladder and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Good thing we have more than 2 weeks to work through it now. Maya leaned back into him, let herself feel the solid warmth of his body, the certainty of his presence. The contract had expired, but nothing else had changed. She'd moved more of her things into the apartment over the past week, had officially kept the guest room as hers, even though she'd spent the last 4 nights falling asleep in Ethan's arms. Her Ashford orientation was in 5 days. The logistics were still complicated, but standing in this kitchen with burnt pancakes and a laughing child and a man who looked at her like she was precious, Maya had never felt more certain of anything. "Daddy?" Claire said from the table where she was pouring cereal with intense concentration. "Can Maya come to my spring concert? It's next Friday, and we're singing songs about plants growing, and she knows about plants." Ethan looked at Maya, a question in his eyes. Next Friday. A week and a half away. A public commitment, school event. The kind of thing that would mark her clearly as part of Claire's life to everyone who knew them. "I wouldn't miss it," Maya said. "I'll even help you practice if you want." Claire's face lit up like sunrise. "Really? We have to do hand motions and everything. Ms. Peterson says they're interpretive." "Interpretive hand motions sound very serious," Maya said gravely. "We should definitely practice those." The morning unfolded in its usual organized chaos. Backpacks located, teeth brushed, Rosa arriving to take Claire to school, while Ethan headed to an early board meeting and Maya prepared for a video call with her future supervisor at Ashford. It was domestic and ordinary and absolutely nothing like the life Maya had imagined for herself 2 weeks ago. It was perfect. Her call with Dr. Reeves, the director of botanical research at Ashford, went better than Maya had dared hope. The woman was brilliant and demanding in equal measure, her questions probing Maya's knowledge and pushing her thinking in ways that made her feel alive. They discussed research priorities, grant opportunities, the rare specimen collection Maya would have access to. By the time the call ended, Maya was vibrating with excitement. She called Ethan immediately. He answered on the second ring, background noise suggesting he was between meetings. "How did it go?" "She's incredible," Maya gushed. "Ethan, the work they're doing there, it's exactly what I've dreamed about. She wants me to focus on conservation genetics for endangered orchid species, which means I'll be working directly with some of the rarest plants in the world." And she mentioned potential collaboration with the New York Botanical Garden, which would mean I could do some research locally instead of commuting to Connecticut every day. She heard the smile in his voice. "That's amazing. I'm so proud of you." "I'm terrified," Maya admitted. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I got this opportunity because of you, because of your connection to Whitmore, and I can't actually deliver?" "Maya." Ethan's tone was firm. "Dr. Reeves doesn't accept researchers based on board connections. She accepts them based on merit. You earned this. Own it." The confidence in his voice steadied her. "Okay. I'll try." "Good. Now I have to get back to this meeting about supply chain logistics that's slowly killing my soul, but I'll see you tonight. Maybe we can celebrate properly." "Celebrate how?" Maya heard the flirtation in her own voice, still sometimes surprised by how easy it had become. "I'll surprise you," Ethan said, and the promise in those words made her shiver. He surprised her with a sunset picnic in Central Park, complete with food from the Italian restaurant where they'd supposedly had their first date. They spread a blanket near the reservoir and watched the sky turn pink and gold while Claire ran around collecting interesting rocks and leaves for her ever-growing collection. "This is nice," Maya said, leaning against Ethan's shoulder. "Very romantic for a fake first date location." "Who says it's fake?" Ethan challenged. "Maybe this is our real first date. The one that counts. Our real first date was in your lobby when I destroyed a priceless orchid, and you offered me an insane contract. Potato, potato." Ethan pressed a kiss to her temple. "The point is, we're here now, making new memories that don't involve contracts or arrangements or desperate lies." Claire ran up then, breathless and excited, her hands cupped around something. "Look what I found. Is it quartz or mica? I can't tell." Maya examined the rock seriously. "Definitely quartz. See how the crystals are hexagonal? Mica would have more of a layered structure. This is a really good specimen." "Can we take it to the museum to confirm?" Claire asked hopefully. "Bernard wants to see the mineral exhibit again." "Bernard has excellent taste in exhibits," Maya said. "I think a museum trip sounds perfect." They packed up as twilight settled over the park, Claire chattering about minerals and museums and whether they could stop for hot chocolate on the way home. Maya carried the blanket while Ethan carried the picnic basket, their hands linked between them, and it felt so natural that Maya almost forgot this wasn't how her life had always been. That night, after Claire was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Maya found Ethan on the balcony. He was staring out at the city, his expression distant in a way that made her nervous. "What's wrong?" she asked, coming to stand beside him. "Nothing's wrong," but his tone said otherwise. "I've just been thinking." About? About how much has changed in 2 weeks. A month ago, I was barely holding my company together, terrified of failing Claire, so desperate I was willing to lie to a major investor. Now the investment's secured, the company's stabilizing, and I have you. He turned to look at her. It feels too good to be real, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maya understood the fear, had felt it herself in quiet moments, this sense that happiness this complete couldn't possibly last. What if there is no other shoe? What if this is just what life looks like when you stop trying to control everything and let yourself trust the process? The process? Ethan's smile was wry. Is that what we're calling colliding with a plant scientist and bribing her into a fake engagement? I prefer to think of it as fate with spectacularly bad timing and excellent results, Maya said. But if you want to be technical about it, sure, we can call it the process. He pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her waist. I love you, he said quietly. I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out, but I need you to know that. What I feel for you, it's not gratitude for helping with the Whitmore situation. It's not just appreciation for how good you are with Claire. It's love. Real, terrifying, all-consuming love. Maya's heart stuttered. They'd been building toward this for days, circling around the words without quite saying them. But hearing them aloud, feeling the weight of Ethan's confession, it made everything suddenly, vividly real. I love you too, she whispered. It's completely insane and probably too fast, and I have no idea how to balance it with starting a demanding new job, but it's true. I love you. I love Claire. I love this life we're accidentally building together. Ethan kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promises neither of them had the words for yet. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. Move in with me, he said, officially. Not as part of an arrangement, not temporarily. Actually, move in. Make this your home. I already did, Maya pointed out. Most of my stuff is in the guest room. I sleep in your bed more nights than not. I'm on the emergency contact list for Claire's school. I mean, really move in. Get rid of your Brooklyn studio. Make this permanent. Stop hedging your bets in case it doesn't work out. Ethan's eyes were intense. I want you to choose this. Choose us. Fully. Maya felt the fear rise up. What if it didn't work? What if she failed at being the partner Ethan needed and the parental figure Claire deserved? What if the demanding research schedule proved incompatible with family life? But underneath the fear was something stronger. Certainty. The bone-deep knowledge that this was exactly where she was supposed to be. Okay, she said. I'll give up the studio. I'll make this home. Yeah? Ethan's smile was brilliant. Yeah. Maya kissed him again, softer this time. On one condition. Name it. We tell Claire together, properly, that this isn't temporary anymore, that I'm not just staying for a few weeks, that we're building something permanent. She deserves to know what she's getting into. Agreed, Ethan said. Tomorrow morning, before school, we tell her together. They did. Claire took the news with the solemn seriousness of a child who understood that adult decisions had weight and meaning. She asked careful questions about what this meant, whether Maya would always be there, if she should call her mom or something else. You can call me whatever feels right to you, Maya said gently. I'm not trying to replace your mom. She'll always be your mom. But I'm here now, and I'm planning to stay, and that means I get to be part of your family in whatever way makes sense to you. Claire thought about this, her face scrunched in concentration. Can I think about it? About what to call you? You can take all the time you need, Maya assured her. Okay. Claire seemed satisfied with this. Then, with the lightning-fast subject changes of childhood. Does this mean you'll come to all my school stuff now? Like parent-teacher conferences and field trips and career day? If you want me to, absolutely. I want you to. Claire's smile was sunshine. And can you help me with my plant project? The moonflowers are getting tall and I think they might bloom soon, and I want to make sure I'm documenting everything correctly for my presentation. They spent the morning before school examining the moonflowers, Maya explaining how to measure growth and identify pre-bloom indicators, while Claire took meticulous notes in her science journal. Ethan watched from the doorway, his expression soft with something Maya was learning to recognize as contentment. The next week blurred into a rhythm of new routines and careful adjustments. Maya officially gave notice on her Brooklyn studio, spent a weekend moving the last of her things into Ethan's apartment, their apartment now, she kept having to remind herself. She started at Ashford, threw herself into research that was everything she'd hoped for and more challenging than she'd anticipated. Dr. Reeves was demanding but brilliant, pushing Maya to think bigger, question assumptions, reach for breakthroughs instead of incremental improvements. The commute was brutal on days she had to be on campus early, but the collaboration with the New York Botanical Garden came through faster than expected, giving Maya the flexibility to split her time between locations. She fell into a pattern, 3 days a week at Ashford, 2 days at the Botanical Garden, evenings and weekends devoted to the family she was learning to be part of. It wasn't perfect. There were late nights when experiments ran long and she missed dinner, mornings when exhaustion made her short-tempered, moments when balancing research demands with family life felt impossible. But Ethan was patient, and Claire was understanding, and together they figured out systems that worked more often than they didn't. 6 weeks after the contract expired, Maya looked up from her microscope at Ashford to find Ethan standing in the doorway of her lab. She blinked, certain she was hallucinating from too many hours staring at genetic sequences. "What are you doing here?" she asked, pulling off her gloves. "Bringing you lunch." He held up a bag from her favorite deli. "And reminding you that eating is a thing humans need to do occasionally." "I ate," Maya protested, then reconsidered. "This morning. I definitely ate this morning." "It's 4 p.m., Ethan said dryly. "Come on. Take a break. Your orchids will still be here in 20 minutes." They ate lunch in one of the greenhouses, surrounded by rare specimens and the humid warmth of carefully controlled climate. Ethan asked about her work, listened with genuine interest as Maya explained the breakthrough she was close to achieving in orchid propagation. She asked about his company, the new sustainable material they were preparing to launch. "It's everything we hoped for," Ethan said. "Better, actually. The testing results came back yesterday. We're looking at a 43% reduction in carbon emissions compared to traditional materials. Production costs are slightly higher than projected, but Whitmore's investment gives us the runway to absorb that until we can scale." "That's incredible," Maya said. "You're going to change the industry." "We're going to change it," Ethan corrected. "This whole thing, the company, the breakthrough, getting to this point, none of it happens without you. Without your willingness to take a risk on a desperate stranger with a broken orchid and an insane proposal." Maya laughed. "I think the risk was mutual. I could have said no to your contract." "But you didn't." Ethan reached across the table, took her hand. "You said yes. You chose to trust me even when you had every reason not to, and that choice changed everything." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands linked, surrounded by the quiet breathing of plants. Then Ethan pulled something from his pocket, a small box that made Maya's breath catch. "Before you panic," he said quickly, "this isn't what you think it is. Or maybe it is, but not in the way you're worried about." He opened the box to reveal a ring. Not the emerald engagement ring Maya had been wearing. That was still on her finger, a symbol of the arrangement that had become real. This was different, simpler. A platinum band with a single small diamond, elegant and understated. "The emerald was always meant to be temporary," Ethan said, "part of the performance, but this..." He took the new ring from the box. "This is real. This is me asking you, for real this time, if you'll marry me. Not because of contracts or investor expectations, not to save my company or secure your research position. Just because I love you and I want to build a life with you, and I can't imagine my future without you in it." Maya felt tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, I know it's fast," he continued. "I know we've only known each other 2 months. I know conventional wisdom says we should wait, take our time, make sure this is real before we make it legal. But Maya, every day with you feels more real than anything I've experienced in years. And I don't want to wait for some arbitrary timeline to acknowledge what we both already know. This is it. You're it. You and me and Claire. Building something lasting." What does Claire think about this? Maya asked through her tears. She helped me pick out the ring, Ethan admitted. She wanted to make sure it was as pretty as you are, but not too fancy because you don't like fancy things. Her words, not mine. Maya laughed and cried at the same time. She's not wrong. So? Ethan's voice was hopeful and nervous in equal measure. Will you marry me? For real this time? Maya looked at the man kneeling in front of her, this complicated, brilliant, broken-open person who'd collided into her life and changed everything. She thought about the past 2 months, the honesty and the fear, the family dinners and midnight conversations, the way they'd built something real from the foundation of desperate lies. She thought about Claire and her rock collection, about moonflowers blooming and careers launching and futures unfolding in directions she'd never anticipated. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. For real this time. Ethan's kiss tasted like tears and laughter and promise. He slid the new ring onto her finger beside the emerald, and Maya looked at both of them, the fake one that had become real, the real one that marked new beginnings, and felt something settle in her chest. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of choice. The decision to build something lasting even when the path forward wasn't certain. They set a date for 6 months later, small ceremony like they'd always planned, but this time actually meaning it. Maya's parents flew in from Oregon, delighted and slightly bewildered by their daughter's whirlwind romance. Whitmore and Eleanor attended, along with close friends and colleagues who'd watched this relationship develop from its unconventional beginning. Claire was the flower girl, her role taken with utmost seriousness. She wore a dress the color of moonflowers and carried a basket of orchid petals. And when the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, she stood up solemnly and said, "I don't object, but I do have a question." The gathered guests laughed, and Ethan smiled. "What's your question, Bug?" "Can I call Maya Mom now? I've been thinking about it like she said I could, and I decided that's what I want. If that's okay with everyone." Maya felt her throat close up. She looked at Ethan, saw tears in his eyes too, then knelt down to Claire's level. "That would be more than okay," she said softly. "It would be an honor." "Okay, good," Claire said, satisfied. "You can keep going now." The ceremony continued through laughter and tears, and when Ethan kissed his bride, Maya tasted salt and joy and the beautiful uncertainty of futures built on hope rather than guarantees. The reception was held in the rooftop garden of Ethan's building and dancing under string lights with her new husband, while their daughter, showed off her rock collection to anyone who would listen. Maya thought about how far they'd come from that collision in the lobby. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan murmured against her ear. "Broken orchids," Maya said, "and how sometimes the best things grow from the pieces we think are too damaged to save." 3 months later, Maya stood in her lab at Ashford, staring at something impossible. The orchid in front of her, Apaphyopedilum rothschildianum, the same species she'd destroyed in Ethan's lobby, was blooming. Purple and gold petals unfurled like stained glass, the intricate patterns more beautiful than anything she'd imagined when she'd spent 6 months nurturing its predecessor. But this one was different. This one she'd grown from a small offset she'd carefully extracted from the broken plant before disposing of it that terrible morning. She'd brought the tiny piece to her first day at Ashford, planted it in the hopes that something might survive, and then promptly forgotten about it in the chaos of new research and family life and falling in love. The plant had survived, had thrived. And now, 6 months after she'd thought it lost forever, it was blooming exactly as she'd always hoped it would. Maya called Ethan immediately. "You need to come to Ashford. Now. Bring Claire." "What's wrong?" The panic in his voice made her realize her mistake. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Just trust me and come." They arrived an hour later, Claire bursting through the lab doors with her usual enthusiasm, Ethan following more cautiously. Maya led them to the climate-controlled greenhouse where the orchid stood in solitary glory. "Oh," Claire breathed, "it's so pretty." "It's the orchid," Ethan said quietly. "The one from the lobby." "Not that one exactly," Maya explained, "but grown from it. I saved a small piece before we threw it away, planted it hoping something might survive. And it did. It survived and grew, and now it's blooming." She looked at her family, because that's what they were now, officially and completely, and felt the metaphor land heavy and perfect. We're like this orchid, she said. We started from something broken, something that seemed too damaged to save, but we took the pieces that mattered and we built something new, something stronger. And now look at us. We're blooming. Ethan pulled her close, Claire wrapping her arms around both of them. They stood like that for a long moment, three people who'd found each other through collision and contract and the courage to choose honesty over comfort. I want to take it home, Claire said suddenly. The orchid. Can we bring it home and keep it in our apartment? I don't know if that's... Maya started, then stopped. Looked at the orchid, symbol of everything they'd survived and built together. Actually, yes. Let's bring it home. It belongs with us. They carefully transported the orchid back to Manhattan, set it up in a place of honor near the balcony where Maya and Ethan had shared so many conversations. It thrived there, blooming repeatedly over the following months, a living reminder of how sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the most unlikely beginnings. Maya's research continued to flourish. She published papers that changed approaches to conservation genetics, developed propagation techniques that saved species from the brink of extinction. Dr. Reeves became a mentor and friend, and the collaboration with the New York Botanical Garden expanded into a permanent research position that let Maya split her time between locations without the brutal commute. Ethan's company launched their sustainable building material to industry-changing success. Within a year, they'd secured contracts with major construction firms, expanded production, started developing second-generation materials even more revolutionary than the first. Whitmore remained an investor and advisor, he and Eleanor becoming something like family. Claire grew and thrived, her curiosity expanding from rocks and plants into astronomy and chemistry and 1,000 other fascinations. She called Maya Mom without hesitation now, and sometimes late at night she'd ask to hear the story of how her parents met, the real version, with the broken orchid and the desperate contract and the courage to choose truth. 5 years after that collision in the lobby, Maya stood in the same greenhouse where Ethan had proposed, surrounded by rare orchids she'd helped save from extinction. Her team had just secured funding for a major conservation project, and she was explaining the details to a group of visiting researchers when Ethan appeared in the doorway. She finished her explanation, excused herself, went to him with the easy comfort of someone who'd spent years learning another person's rhythms. "What are you doing here?" she asked, smiling. "I thought you had that board meeting." "Rescheduled it." Ethan's eyes were bright with something Maya couldn't quite read. "I have news, big news, the kind that needs to be shared in person." "Okay," Maya said slowly. "You're being weird. What's going on?" "We got the call this morning. The Sustainability Council, the international one I applied to months ago, they're giving us the Innovation Award. It's one of the highest honors in the field, and they want both of us, you for the conservation work, me for the building materials, to accept it together at their gala in Stockholm next month." Maya felt her jaw drop. "Stockholm? Ethan, that's incredible." "We're bringing Claire," he continued, talking faster now, "making it a family trip. She's never been to Europe, and I thought we could extend it, take a week to explore after the ceremony. What do you think?" Maya thought about the girl who'd collided into a lobby carrying an orchid she'd nurtured for months, about the man who'd offered her an impossible contract born of desperation, about everything they'd built in the years since, the honesty and the courage, the family and the love, the careers that flourished alongside rather than in spite of their relationship. "I think it's perfect," she said. "All of it. The award, the trip, this life we've built together, it's absolutely perfect." "Even the parts that started with lies?" Ethan's smile was gentle, teasing. "Especially those parts," Maya said, "because they taught us that truth matters more than perfection, that sometimes you have to break things before you can build something lasting, that the best partnerships are the ones you choose every single day, even when it's hard." She kissed him then, there in the greenhouse surrounded by rare blooms and the quiet breathing of growing things. And somewhere in that kiss was everything they'd survived and everything they'd become. A collision that became a contract, that became a choice, that became a love so deep and real it could weather anything. That night they told Claire about Stockholm over dinner. She was thrilled about the trip, already making lists of things she wanted to see and specimens she hoped to find. After she went to bed, Maya and Ethan stood on their balcony, the orchid from the lobby blooming beside them, the city spreading out in a carpet of light below. Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if we hadn't collided that morning? Ethan asked. Sometimes, Maya admitted, I'd probably still be doing plant deliveries, saving money slowly, hoping for a break that might never come. You'd probably still be lying to investors, drowning in stress, holding everything together alone. Instead, we're here. Ethan pulled her close. Building something that matters. Together. Together, Maya echoed. She looked at the orchid, at the blooms that had emerged from something broken. You know what I learned from all this? From the collision and the contract and everything after? What? That some things aren't meant to be saved the way we expect them to be saved. Sometimes you can't piece the broken parts back together and make them like they were before. Sometimes you have to take what survived and build something completely new. Something better than what you had before because it's stronger at the broken places. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, are we talking about orchids or us? Both, Maya said. Always both. They stood together in the darkness, two people who'd collided in a lobby and decided to build a future from the wreckage, who'd started with lies and chose truth, who'd learned that love wasn't about perfect beginnings or guaranteed endings, but about showing up every day and choosing each other anyway. The orchid bloomed beside them, purple and gold in the city lights, a testament to survival, to growth, to the impossible beauty that emerges when you refuse to give up on broken things. And somewhere in the apartment behind them, a little girl slept peacefully, dreaming of Stockholm and rocks and all the questions she'd ask tomorrow. Safe in the knowledge that her family, built from collision and contract and courageous love, would be there to help her find the answers. This was what lasted. Not the lies they'd started with or the perfection they'd pretended to have, but the messy, beautiful truth of choosing each other, day after imperfect day, building something that would outlast them all. From the broken pieces of one morning's collision, they'd grown something extraordinary, something worth every risk, every fear, every moment of uncertainty. They'd grown home,